right, guys, you guys are going to love this one. So tokenization has officially moved from experimental pilots to live production on Wall Street, with the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation set to begin limited tokenized securities trading in July of 2026 and a full platform launch in October of 2026. The milestone involves tokenizing actual tangible assets held in custody, including Russell 1000 constituents, ETFs, and U.S. Treasuries, while maintaining existing investor rights and protections. Major financial institutions are rapidly integrating blockchain infrastructure to enable 24/7 trading, instant settlements, and stable coin-based funding. The New York Stock Exchange, NYSE, is developing a tokenized securities platform in partnership with BNY Mellon and Citibank, while NASDAQ has received SEC approval to test blockchain-issued asset frameworks. This convergence is supported by regulatory clarity, including the Genius Act and SEC No Action Letters, which have facilitated a market expansion projected to reach $80 billion to $4 trillion in real-world assets by 2028. So why is tokenization hitting the mainstream so important? Let's talk about that. So there's a document that I've read multiple times on this channel, multiple different parts of it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing today because it's too long. I will leave all the source links to everything I'm showing you in this video down below. But it's from Policy Horizons Canada, who runs the Biodigital Convergence, creating the policy, the global policy. This document is called Biodigital Today and Tomorrow. It was released in 2022. And as you can see by the picture here, it's a SIM chip merging with your genes, with your DNA. Okay? It's bio and digital converging together, merging together, your body and the digital world meshing, which is exactly what 6G is all about. So now you come down to the 5.0 health section and you keep scrolling down, okay? There's lots of interesting stuff in this paper, like the CRISPRization of humans, what your future healthcare will look like in this biodigital convergence. I would strongly suggest reading the entire document, but today we're going to go through the most important piece that has to do with tokenization. So biodatabases. Now listen very, very closely and carefully right now. This was written in 2022. It is a global document that is basically like a think tank that's in Canada, and they're writing the policy considerations that every one of the 194 member states of the United Nations are going to be basically copying and pasting and implementing it into their policy to push through the biodigital convergence or the bioeconomy, because that's what the entire economy is moving into. It's called the bioeconomy. So biodatabases, DNA databases could become a source of income and health security. In the coming years, it could be possible and relatively simple to collect DNA information using a smartphone. As biodata becomes more ubiquitous, questions surrounding who collects, uses, retains, and discloses it will become pivotal. Applications, apps, smartwatches, wearables, and phones are already collecting biodata outside the traditional healthcare sector. An extension of this data collection would be commercial and consumer engagement with biomic or genomic data. DNA data marketplaces based on blockchains could emerge, allowing individuals or designated data trusts to share genomic information with corporations, academic researchers, and even governments in exchange for benefits or payments. Let me repeat that. In exchange for benefits or payments. That's UBI, Universal Basic Income. So that's all we're going to read from this document. We're going to move over to another document. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible so it makes sense for you. So now all I did, because we heard in that Biodigital Today and Tomorrow about DNA data marketplace, okay, based on blockchain. So all I did was go to Google, any browser. In this case, I'm using Brave, and I typed in blockchain DNA data marketplace. So blockchain DNA data marketplaces are decentralized platforms that allow individuals to store, control, and monetize their genomic data. eliminating traditional corporate intermediaries like 23andMe. These systems use cryptocurrency tokens and smart contracts to facilitate secure transactions between data owners and researchers or pharmaceutical companies, ensuring privacy through encryption and anonymous identity management. Key platforms in this emerging space include Nebula Genomics offers free or low-cost whole genome sequencing in exchange for Nebula tokens, allowing users to sell access to their encrypted data to researchers while retaining control over who can view it. EncryptGen Gene Chain, the first blockchain-enabled DNA marketplace, enabling users to upload data from other providers, set their own price for access, and receive payments in DNA tokens. Xenome uses a distributed network of nodes to fragment and encrypt data, allowing users to earn ZNA tokens by contributing data to genomic analysis without exposing their full genome to any single entity. DNA ATIX provides genetic wallets for anonymous data exchange, rewarding users with DNA TIX tokens for participating in research studies. These marketplaces address the privacy and consent concerns of traditional genetic testing by giving users the ability to grant or revoke access dynamically. However, the industry faces challenges, including cryptocurrency volatility, regulatory uncertainty, and the need for a large user base to create valuable data sets for research. So they already have a DNA data marketplace based on blockchain where you can monetize your genomic data. This is already a reality, okay? But it all links into what is coming. Why the data centers? Why the AI? Why the nanotechnology in everything? I hope it all clicks by the end of this video. So now, right here on Forbes magazine, there's already a DNA token, okay? Has Block Explorer ID added to it, everything, okay? So about DNA. DNA is the blueprint of life and now the foundation of a revolutionary meme coin. Bridging biology and blockchain, DNA celebrates the essence of evolution and innovation. With DNA, we're rewriting the crypto genome, transparent, decentralized, and unstoppable. From holders to innovators, this token unites a vibrant community driven by curiosity and creativity. It's not just a coin, it's a movement to evolve the way we think about memes, money, and the molecular magic of life. So it's already being traded on CoinMarketCap through this DNA data marketplace. So now all I did was I went to Google, Brave, in my case, doesn't matter what browser, you're going to get the same information. Staking your body. Staking your body refers to futuristic Web3 concept where individuals use biometric data such as DNA or iris scans to verify their physical existence and potentially earn passive income or access to decentralized financial services. This process involves zero-knowledge proofs and hardware attestation to create a cryptographic certificate of biological reality without exposing raw sensitive data, effectively turning physiology into liquidity. Key aspects of this concept include biometric verification, uses sensor and scanners to confirm a unique living person, generating a ZK proof that is sent to the blockchain while raw data is destroyed or kept encrypted via fully homomorphic encryption. Economic implications. Users might stake their biological identity to receive Universal Basic Income, UBI, payouts, or grant lab access to genetic data. This raises significant privacy risks regarding family, medical history, and data cloning. Privacy risk. Critics argue this creates a new form of economic coercion and total de-anonymization, where the right to join the digital economy is bought at a price of surrendering biological privacy. Now, I'm going to add to that as a critic and privacy risks. If you accept this and you stake your body for a universal basic income, I'm pretty sure there will be mandates attached to that where you will have to provide the government whatever biological data they require of you in order to receive a universal basic income. Now that your body is a token on this network, because as soon as you take that universal basic income, that's what you are going to be doing. You are going to be staking your body on this DNA network. So we're going to read the article from ForkLog, which is like a crypto forking service. Staking your body on the biopolitics of the Web3 era. This was written 27/02/2026. The rise of artificial intelligence has put traditional online verification under strain. Text, passwords, CAPTCHA, and facial recognition algorithms no longer guarantee a user's uniqueness. The digital realm now depends on a cryptographic proof of humanness. The Web3 industry is moving to a new tier of identification, turning the physical body into a universal access instrument. The iris, palm, vein patterns, heartbeat, and genetic code are becoming the primary keys to the new economy. Your golden age. ForkLog examines how the philosophical concept of biopolitics is taking shape in blockchain networks, why metaverses want users' biological data, and what risks lurk in trading one's own genome. Bare life in Web3. The modern idea of biopolitics was formulated in the mid-1970s by Michael Foucault. The French philosopher showed that as the modern state emerged, power turned to governing populations and economy through medicine, hygiene, and demography. The human body became an object of political regulation via disciplinary institutions, schools, hospitals, prisons, statistics, and mechanisms to control the quality and duration of life. Foucault's observations were later radicalized by the Italian political philosopher Giorgio Agamben in Homo Sacer, Sovereign Power and Bare Life, 1995. He introduced the term bare life, nuda vita, a condition in which a person is stripped of political subjecthood and treated purely as a biological organism. Web3 can be seen as the basis for a new economic infrastructure in which the states and capital's monopoly over identity cedes to decentralized protocols. Here, blockchain networks forge their own biopolitics. The physical body is no longer merely a vessel for the mind. The organism becomes a generator of data. Today's technologies are turning bare life into digitized life. A unique DNA nucleotide sequence or an unrepeatable iris pattern becomes the foundation of social capital. In future, protocols may require users to prove biological reality in exchange for access to financial services, governance, and capital allocation. From iris to DNA, the evolution of biometric networks. The crypto industry's mass encounter with biometrics began with projects like formerly known as WorldCoin. Its developers built an orb specifically to scan the iris by providing a biometric imprint. Participants received WLD, so that's WorldCoin tokens, and a World ID digital passport. The launch ignited a debate over the ethics of swapping unique biological markers for financial assets. Even so, the idea of Universal Basic Income, UBI, financed by Protocol Tokenomics, duly attracted millions of users. World's early lead in proof of personhood proved short-lived. New protocols changed how data are gathered. Hardware constraints are giving way to mobile technologies. The Humanity Protocol deployed a network on Polygon that uses palm biometrics, including vein scanning, via smartphones or dedicated devices. It does not require org-level specialized hardware, dramatically accelerating network scaling. The TON ecosystem integrated human codes solutions. Telegram users can verify identity by scanning a palm directly from the mini apps. Developers rely on cryptographic protection of biometric vectors inside the phone using secure enclave standards available to iOS users. Progress in the sector is pushing towards deeper data. Startups are laying the groundwork for DNA collection. Projects at the intersection of blockchain and decentralized science, DeSci, are emerging. Platforms such as Genome Deo offer to sequence a genome and encrypt the results. The genome's owner can sell time, limited access to genetic markers to pharmaceutical companies without revealing a direct link to identity. These trends point to a single economic model of total biometric coverage. It is plausible that to receive enhanced UBI payouts in future metaverses, users will need to provide a comprehensive biological profile. If base level payouts can be unlocked with a simple face scan, the mid-tier may require wearables, streaming heart rate and sleep phases. The highest level of passive income would be reserved for fully verified donors of genetic codes. So they just told you right there, once you take your UBI, there's going to be levels to this. So the more genetic DNA biological data you agree to, the higher your universal basic income will be. The less stuff that you agree to do and take part in, the lower your universal basic income will be. They just told you that clear as day right there.
We started something big, and I believe firmly that it will become bigger and bigger as our devices will move from being in electronics to being more and more embedded with biology. Just look at the 6G standardization, how it is going. Biology is all there.
Because if we collect information from every individual in the world, there will be a lot of information here, right? So then you have the scalability problem. You need the scalable, secure solutions, for example, right?
Another question, is it possible to remotely reprogram those bacteria you put inside the human body?
Yes.
So if so, the security risk is much more challenging than we thought.
Absolutely, yeah. So actually, that's true. Like
at the beginning, you mentioned the network is two-way. So if the network communication is two-way and we can reprogram the bacteria we are putting inside the body, we have a huge risk of security over there.
Right? This part is the cyber world, right? So now, of course, that's really very, very important that somebody will send all the wrong information and it can create a zombie, right? All the device inside can malfunction, right? So it's very, very important that who is transmitting or who is reprogramming that, right? So of course, it's very important.
And somebody, in fact, can cut the communication with the internet, and like a man in the middle attack, and come to the near field communication and reprogram it. And this is a huge attack.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's very likely, and that's why. It's extremely important that part I kept saying about security, right, in the cyberspace. So that's an open issue, and hopefully, people will behave nicely. But that's not the case, unfortunately. You're right. So now somebody can come and then really reprogram you and kill you, even. So now somebody can come and then really reprogram you and kill you, even.
Genomics economy, based on genomic networks. Tell us what you mean by genomics economy.
Well, sequencing any genome costs money. Again, as you alluded to, the very first ones cost millions of dollars. The very first one cost $1 billion. But now it's sub $1,000. And we can extract a lot of value out of this genomic information. We're just learning how to interpret it and extract value for both health and potentially economy. Whether it's medicine development, whether it's understanding how our various traits link to the way a drug is developed and so on. So there is an emerging biological economy coming from the world of genomic sequence information. Well, in the same way that your genome really represents your program, we're leaving more and more digital information in our lives today, whether it's our emails, our social media, et cetera, et cetera. All of that information can be gathered and collected to make a very good digital representation of you, almost a digital twin. This can go down at a systems level, your whole body, if your body's been scanned, right down to the cellular level today, which you can think of as a virtual twin of a living cell, which is now increasingly testable. So these digital twins, or you can think of them as avatars, are going to become much more important for understanding an individual, their health, their development, their metabolism, and so on. So this is going to be, I believe, one of the main applications of AI analysis and the incredible amount of digital information that we're collecting about each other. I've been working in the field of synthetic biology now for over a decade, which is really learning how to program biological systems. And the easiest things to program, because they have the smallest programs, are viruses. And yet I look at viruses as essentially USB sticks, memory drives, that need a cell, which you can think of as a computer, to execute the programs. But they're very specific for plugging in. So we design viruses that when they dock with a cancer cell, essentially load a program that says, cancer cell, you need to die. But just like software that we may have on a computer software on a USB stick, it can deliver a useful program or it can deliver malware. So I think we're in probably the most significant period in biotechnology for the next 20 years, where we have to figure out the right systems to drive it towards positive applications and minimize the potential for biological hacking, so to speak.
Now, we already have systems that have computing capacity of an 8-bit computer like Commodore 64. To make sure we don't lose control over the nanorobots after they're injected, my team developed nanorobots that carry antennae. These antennae are made from metal nanoparticles. Now, the antenna enabled the nanobots to respond to externally applied electromagnetic fields. So these versions of nanobots can actually be activated with the press of a button on a joystick. Or, for example, using a controller such as the Xbox or Wii, if you ever had the chance to play with those. And you can see one of my students in the lab try configuring an Xbox app to control nanobots. For example, you can imagine nanorobots being injected to Dana, my daughter, for example, and the doctor can guide those robots into the site, into the leg, and just activate them with a hand gesture. And you can already see an example where we actually took cancer cells and loaded robots with cancer drugs and activated the drug by a hand gesture, and we can actually kill cancer cells just by doing this, which as you can see here. And the interesting thing is that because the controller, like the Xbox, is connected to the internet, the controller actually links those nanobots to the network. So they have an actual IP address, and they can be accessed from a remote device sitting on the same network. For example, my daughter's smartphone. So just by controlling the controller, this can be done. The last thing I'm going to show is, if you look at our body, you'll see that every cell type, every organ, every tissue has their own unique molecular signature. And this is equivalent to a physical IP address made of molecules. And if you know these molecules, you can use those nanobots to browse the organism wide web, as we call it. And you can program them to look for bits. This could be, for example, signaling molecules between cells, and either fetch them for diagnostics or carry them to different addresses. And we already have robots that can hijack signals between cells and manipulate an entire network of communication between cells. And this is great for controlling very complex diseases in which many cell types communicate and orchestrate and perpetuate the disease. So, before I finish, I'd just like to thank my amazing team at Bar-Ilan University and all the colleagues that took part in this extraordinary journey, starting from the George Church Lab in Harvard and ending today at Bar-Ilan University in the Faculty of Life Sciences. And I really hope that anywhere between a year and 5 years from now, we'll be able to use these in humans and finally witness the emergence of nanobot society. Thank you very much.
I'm here today to tell you that we're actually hacking the software of life, and that it's changing the way we think about prevention and treatment of disease. So here's all the biology you need to know in 30 seconds. Our body is made out of organs. Our organs are made out of cells. And in every cell, there's this thing called messenger RNA, or mRNA for short, that transmits the critical information from the DNA, our genes, to the protein, which is really the stuff we're all made out of. This is the critical information that determines what a cell will actually do. And so we think of it like an operating system. And so if you could actually change that, which we call the software of life, if you could introduce a line of code or change a line of code, It turns out that has profound implications for everything. So many of us get a vaccine. What is a vaccine? It is an injection in our arm where we get bits and pieces of the virus, the proteins. And that teaches our immune system to recognize the virus, and so when we get infected, we're not sick. Now, imagine if instead of giving the protein, we would give the instructions on how to make the protein, how the body can make its own vaccine. That's an mRNA vaccine, and here's what it looks like from the cell. So the traditional approach has protein floating around your cells. An mRNA vaccine approach has the cells themselves in your own body making the vaccine. What's more alarming, a stranger prowling the neighborhood or somebody who just broke into your ground floor and tripped the alarm? That's what happens with an mRNA vaccine. You've tripped the alarm wire, and now the cell is dialing 911. It's calling the police at the same time as it's making the protein and saying that's the bad guy. If you think about what it is we're trying to do, we've taken information and our understanding of that information and how that information is transmitted in a cell, and we've taken our understanding of medicine and how to make drugs, and we're fusing the two. We think of it as information therapy.
Beyond the Internet of Things is something called the Internet of Nano Things, which is picture, nanoparticles that are floating through your bloodstream and then doing various things like checking for, the same thing that your body will do, for example, the presence of invading pathogens as an example. So these nanoparticles or nanosensors need to be nano-networked, and they're talking about a couple of different ways to do it. And one of the obvious things, this is not the mind-blowing part yet, one of the obvious things to do is to have nano antennas on the nanosensors that then communicate to a micro gateway, and that's kind of what you would expect, right? You build this really small radio and you do some power scavenging in the blood to kind of power it up, and you send these terahertz signals just, a little bit, further away, and then from there move up to a gateway. So what they're talking about doing, and they have a number of different ways that they think they can do it, is actually using the same biological mechanisms that the body uses right now, or known in biology, to occur. So for example, using viruses or bacteria that are carrying encoded DNA messages is one example. Also using neural networks to be able to do it as well. So the idea would be, picture you have all these little nanosensors floating through your body, and then they're actually generating their own coded DNA messages that are then diffusing through your bloodstream until they get to this micro gateway that then converts them to a radio signal that then talks to your smartphone and says, oh my God, Joe just got the flu or cut his finger or whatever. It's just that thinking about biological means of data networking to me is the most amazing technology.
To visualize this coming onslaught of data from a variety of sources, and also the fact that the human body is really poised to become the key node on the network. I'm sure Oleg will talk about the Internet of Things, but the sort of the Internet of everything, where the human body really becomes a central piece. And one of the, I'll talk about a little bit later, I suppose, one of the strategies of pulling this together is really creating interdisciplinary groups of people who up until now might not have realized that they have a lot to talk about. We're going to have new models of content, and a lot of the content will come from the body, and sort of working on a vision of, in a sense, the computer exploding onto the built environment so that information is displayed everywhere coming from a variety of sources. And the linchpin of this, I think, is going to be the body and biometrics.
And the question is, what may be the effects of 6G on human health? What would you say that could be?
Well, I think I already addressed that. I mean, I think, one of the great capabilities of even 5G and going forward into 6G is, health, body area networking, where you can monitor what's going on in your body, in real time. And it can be, downloaded to your cell phone for analysis and so forth, or it can be transmitted to your physician for analysis. So people with, for example, heart conditions, rather than being monitored once a month, they can be monitored in real time and, data analytics can be used to let them know if there's some issue that they need to deal with, and that's the capability you can only get with a body area network. There's really no other way to do that.
I just finished 5G. I was a leader on 5G, getting that done, and now they're up to 6. Let's do it again. What does that do? Give you a little bit deeper view into somebody's skin? What does that do? Give you a little bit deeper view into somebody's skin? So the 6 is coming, huh? It's coming. Does it ever end? And what happens? You'll be into 7, right? Before 6 gets old, you'll be into 7.
COVID injection is exactly based on this idea. So all these fluids, right, there are nanoscale machines inside, right? So when you look inside. In terms of bio-nano things, these are for the health applications. I did also a lot of research on that the last 15 years. Bio-nanoscale machines, but these are for the, injecting into the body and always monitoring the health problems. And that is also really going really well, like with these COVID vaccines, it's going that direction. These mRNAs are nothing than small scale, nanoscale machines, right? They're programmed and they're injected. And then Internet of Nanoscale things. So those will be part of 7G and beyond, right? Another issue is that I'm having the same problem, maybe you too. There are some people, they're attacking me in the background about ethical issues. I hope it doesn't happen to you, that there are these paranoias that we are doing these things that we are trying to poison the world. I'm serious. So I hope it's not happening to you, but I assume it does. So we have to also teach these people that what we are doing is really helping the mankind, it's not just...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're definitely right. I receive these questions as well. I mean, they attack through the ethical aspect, or they attack through the privacy, security aspect. What are you going to do when you connect my brain or when you connect my kidney? I'm telling you, I don't have such intentions, or none of the people doing this research have such intention. Of course, when we come up with any engineering solution or science, it could be used for good or bad, right? We know from the Manhattan Project example or anything of that sort. So,
in fact, unfortunately, some maniacs in the U.S. found all my work the last 18 years. I'm getting a lot of hatred mail, so my life is in danger. They think that I'm Dr. No in James Bond movies, that I'm trying to manipulate human lives, but it's, I'm not the only one. There are many people working on this subject, Hopefully, people will behave nicely, but that's not the case, unfortunately. You're right. So now somebody can come and then really reprogram you and kill you even.
So today we're again talking about the connected human and body computing and wearables, and our hashtag for today is ConnectedX.
Hi, I'm Jay Iorio. I'm the Director of Innovation at the IEEE Standards Association. My primary focus is, I come at wearables in a sort of tangential way. My primary focus is mixed reality and virtual worlds. So in one sense, the wearables impinge on my area in this way, some way to visualize this coming onslaught of data from a variety of sources, and also the fact that the human body is really poised to become the key node on the network. I'm sure Oleg will talk about the Internet of Things, but the sort of the Internet of Everything, where the human body really becomes a central piece. And one of the, I'll talk about a little bit later, I suppose, one of the strategies of pulling this together is really creating interdisciplinary groups of people who up until now might not have realized that they have a lot to talk about. We're going to have new models of content, and a lot of the content will come from the body and sort of working on a vision of, in a sense, the computer exploding onto the built environment, so that information is displayed everywhere, coming from a variety of sources. And a linchpin of this, I think, is going to be the body and biometrics. My main interest, I think, I could summarize by saying we have new demands for content that are coming in this next generation of technologies. I see, we currently refer to these areas as separate: augmented reality, big data, cloud computing, biometrics, and so forth. But I think ultimately they're going to blend in with each other. And I think the best thing I can do at this point is to try to establish a community of people who traditionally have never really thought of themselves as part of a community, and maybe have never really considered standards as one of the energizing forces of the work. And that would include people in a very wide net, including storytellers, filmmakers, games developers, architects. Ultimately, the content in this new kind of wired age is really going to come from a different place. And I'm fortunate to live in a city where, we have some of the best visual storytellers in the world in Los Angeles. I think the film industry could very constructively be brought in. All of these things are stories, they're narratives. And I know that term gets overused a lot, but really you look at the human body and it's a story. It has a beginning, it has an end, it faces challenges, it has to overcome those challenges, and ideally the protagonist grows through the experience. We also have the built environment, the urban environment, the home, buildings, and so forth. I think it's difficult for me to look at these issues outside of that context. Game developers, for example, have, I think, traditionally thought of themselves as a silo. You write to a console, and that's the end of it. I think games are much more powerful than that. I think games are really a way to systematize experiences. And that can... I think we're going to need that as almost a skeleton, a narrative skeleton, as these technologies evolve. So I would like to see the net cast very wide, much wider than it's traditionally been cast for these types of strictly technical activities, because I don't think they are really technical activities. As the technologies evolve, in a sense, they become more invisible and more human. And so we need human techniques in order to describe them, to make sense of them, to integrate them, and so forth. On a practical level, that means enormous amounts of just a lot of interoperability questions. I think standards are crucial to it, but they're standards that we might not have thought of traditionally, standards that cut across industries, and conversations among constituencies that really have never spoken before and have never really thought of the need for it. I think it all boils down to the kind of content that we're going to have. It's a new kind of content. It's not a phone app necessarily. It's well-wrought stories. So I think the high-level strategy that I would envision is really casting the net wide and bringing a lot of people, artists, creative people, into the technical discussion right from the outset, so that we end up with a robust infrastructure. I think at the highest altitude, I see these technologies evaporating from the point of view of the user. Ultimately, as the technologies become more powerful, they become more integrated into our environment. So, in a sense, we could walk into 2050 now and see not a whole lot of difference. Maybe the light switches would look different, but little subtle differences, when in fact we're inhabiting a robot. I mean, to put it one way, the built environment becomes the computer in a sense. Objects become intelligent. We become intelligent on the network. Our bodies. So, I can see superficially, the future might look very similar to what we have today, except what the end user, it's hard to think of what the citizen will see, might be a completely customized overlay. Three people can walk down the same street and see very different things. I mean, you could argue that that's the case now, but and certainly with people with phones. But ultimately, what we have is really, I think, the specter of very customized, continuous content feeds that, as Karen and Leslie mentioned, there are risks involved, and especially when but the benefits outweigh them. But when you combine all these technologies together, you see that I think issues of identity really become cloudy. It's very unclear in 30 years what real is going to be and what identity is going to be, especially if, to get very futuristic, let's say software is really creating identities for specific purposes that appear to you and me like a real person. I have no idea what the implications of that will be legally, ethically, but it's inevitably going to come. So I would say that the smartest way to handle it would be to address these issues right at the outset rather than trying to impose them on top later, sort of like the security of a computer system. It's most secure when when these issues are sort of thought of from the outset of the design. I can't pick one. I would say standards. I would say that everything that my co-panelists have said, I agree with. I would say standards are key. Interoperability is the glue of all of this. And I would say content. We really have different kinds of content coming in, and part of it is going to be biometric content. Part of it is going to be content that we can't conceivably predict from sources we can't predict, from art forms that don't have names yet, that haven't really evolved yet. So I would say that standards offer the most durable platform for the unknown in the future, and we're going to have plenty of that. We don't know where the content is going to be coming from. We don't really know how we're going to want to integrate that in real time, no less. So I would say content and standards work sort of hand in glove in this, and I would really like to see people focusing on that.
So if we're going to have a successful product, it's really about the wearable being part of who we are. I mean, we joked earlier about having implantables, like diagnostics or some sort of, like, I would love for my teenager to have some sort of chip in the back of her head, but so I could track her. But that's perhaps not realistic just yet. But I think in terms of the technology is here. I mean, it's very clear to me that the MEMS and sensor technology to enable a wired and connected world is here. We have the accelerometers, we have the microspectrometers, we have, all the technology that we have for doing the kinds of things that Dr. Saxon is talking about. And actually, I was on a panel prep call for my mHealth panel that I'll be doing on standards, and all the technology is here. It's about adoption, and it's about understanding the consumer and the person who is ultimately going to wear it. And that's why actually it's something that we've been talking about within our industry association is this concept of co-creation. So it's really going to be important that we do this together, that it's collaborative, that we have all the parties involved. That's a big part of our mantra, is to have that collaborative model. And so we get together, like you're talking about, the Apple iPhone. I'm actually really curious. I mean, Apple with its iPhone 6, it has all these health stats on the phone itself. And yet at the same time, they're introducing a watch, and then, there's Google Glass, and there's all these different wearables, if you will. I'm very curious to see what is picked up and what will take hold. But to get there, we have to deal with issues like standardization. We have to deal with issues of privacy and security, which are two separate issues, right? So security is one, and I think we're still trying to crack that nut. And it's something that I know that we're working on within the industry, that at the chip level, that security is embedded in the chip. And then privacy is another one as well. We all know about the hacker who hacked into his own diabetes, machine or whatever on himself to show that he could do it. I watch Homeland. I saw when, the vice president died because they were able to hack into his pacemaker, and apparently Dick Cheney was worried about that too. I don't know if that's realistic, but we've got to create some safety around obviously privacy, security, standardization is really critical. Interoperability is really critical. And so I think the technology is there. it is here. For example, I just a few weeks ago I hosted a senior executive conference called MEMS Executive Congress, and we had a company, it's actually their research group out of Finland called VTT. They're working on a microspectrometer to diagnose malignant melanoma. All right. And I myself am actually just getting off the tail end of a battle with skin cancer. I would have loved to have had that. I would have loved to have that app on my phone. So my doctor, or even myself, I could have, gone to that mole and said, oh, crap, I need to get that thing removed right now. Rather than, oh, that looks weird, I should go get that checked out, which is pretty much, or people who don't even realize that they have that, So I think, like you were talking about with the EKG, Dr. Saxon, if we have the technology, we can rebuild it. We can use that technology. Now it's about mobilizing it into products where the consumer doesn't know it's there, but it's improving their life. I hope I answered your question, plus a few more. Interoperability is critical. And the issue of standards is right there with that. And so our model at MEMS Industry Group is to work with our member companies. So we have, the companies like Bosch and ST and Kyonix, et cetera, that are making the devices that go in. And so they're the ones that are going to be those, they're the ones that and foundries have that control about this, performance and standardization. But then it goes to that next level. So it's the Apples and the Googles and et cetera that are going to take it and they want interoperability. They want to have their products be plug and play, if you will. And so it's the challenge is the companies on that supply chain, like the device manufacturers that I just mentioned and the foundries, they want to have their special sauce. They want to stand out. They want to show that they are better than the rest. They want to sell more, obviously, because, they want to make more money. They want to please shareholders, whatever. And so it's that balance, and they want to, obviously they want to protect their IP, right? And so you've got this balance between being competitive, as well as being plug and play. And honestly, right now, the industry is still maturing. We're not there yet. So there's a couple areas where you can have that kind of plug and play component where you're getting, plugged into the defibrillator monitoring thingy that Dr. Saxon was talking about. But the reality is, for it to go mainstream, for it to be, worldwide, and where it's affecting lives and improving the world, which is, what it's all about. It's got to be interoperable. I can't say that word. So the standards need to be there. And so what we do is at the MEMS Industry Group, we not only bring together those competitors and have them understand that they have a common interest. And so we created an IEEE standard on performance specs to do that. But we also bring and work with partners. So we work with HIMSS, we work with Continua, we work with, IEEE and NIST and others to help progress that conversation so that we have more people in the room and that more people understand that by working together, they're going to achieve that end goal where everybody wins, as opposed to just a few kind of trying to break in, but, without that big success factor. So I think there's a lot of potential. We're just at the cusp of it. And I feel like the future is really bright.
So now I want to talk about this for a second. I know you guys are noticing it. I live in a small town. It's only like 180 something thousand people. So we're a little bit slower on the technology implementation in my city. I mean, if you go to Toronto, it's going to be self-checkout everywhere. There's going to be driving cars, self-driving vehicles. We don't have the self-driving vehicles yet in my city, but I have seen newspaper headlines saying that they are coming within the next year. We do have all those new LED streetlights already deployed. But what I'm noticing is everywhere in retail. So from grocery stores to clothing stores to even the Value Village in my city to food, restaurants, McDonald's, Wendy's, shit like that. It's more self-checkouts now than it is person to person. There is less and less employees that are working at these stores now because of these self-checkouts. And this is only began. Like, this is only the beginning. It's going to keep getting deployed. Right now, the only people, humans, that they actually have working at most of the retail type of stores, like the Value Village and stuff like that, are one person at a customer service desk, and they don't do person-to-person checkout. They'll just help you if you have any questions or returns or whatever. They guide you over to the self-checkouts. I wonder, like, how many of these people that you see in this picture are parents? I wonder how many of these people that are parents, before they go to this self-checkout, stop and think for a second and even come to realize that every time you're using this self-checkout as a parent who has a child that's going to need a job in the future, leaving high school, during high school, what are the most normal first jobs that children end up getting? Oh, retail, fast food, answering a phone somewhere. You can't call a government service or any type of service these days and get a human being. Some of them, you can't even get a human being. Some of them, the AI picks up and tries to do the automated voice bullshit. Some of them, you can press 0 a bunch of times and you will eventually get an operator and you can push for human being from there. But some of them don't even have that option anymore. But I wonder how many of these people are parents and how many of these people are realizing that they're literally selling their children's future out right now, just by using this right now. We are already at a situation where the kids today don't have anywhere to go to get a job because of these self-checkouts. Every time we give these self-checkouts the numbers, that makes these more popular. That means more humans are going to lose their jobs and be replaced with these. So for the love of God, I ask you, please, if you're a parent and you've been using that self-checkout to save yourself the 5-10 minutes when you're done your shopping and you're ready to go pay for it, for the love of God, please take the extra 5-10 minutes, find the person-to-person checkout, and give them the numbers to help keep them employed in these stores. Because if you keep giving these self-checkouts the numbers, you may not realize it, but the reality is you are literally selling your children's future job out. Our children will not have a future job if we keep supporting these AIs and self-checkouts. The only option your child will end up having in the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years, 2 years, the only option they will have is that universal basic income that the government is going to offer as they continue replacing. They're literally replacing human jobs with these. They're not replacing these jobs and then creating other jobs for the humans. They're just straight out replacing these jobs and leaving no job for the humans, which these jobs would be the jobs that our children are going to be starting their work career, their work life doing. And these jobs are no longer available now. 5 more years, there won't even be the human customer service representative. They won't need the human floor walkers that walk around the aisles and stock shelves. They'll have robots stocking the shelves. They'll have the high-tech surveillance with all the sensors and the AI watching people while they shop. And if the AI sees somebody trying to steal something or acting shady, it'll be all linked in with the security system. They'll probably just lock the front doors until the police show up. But they won't have a need for any of the humans that are currently left working in these stores, which is usually just the one customer service human and the few floor walkers. All of the human cashiers are gone now. If you go to the grocery store, it's the self-checkout is the busiest part, and there's maybe 1 or sometimes 2 on certain busy days, like the end of the month and the weekend and stuff like that. 1 or maybe possibly 2 humans working a person-to-person checkout. And the only question I have is how many of those people that are going to these self-checkouts are actually parents, and how many of those parents that are going to this self-checkout stop before they go there, think to themselves, if I'm supporting this and I'm giving this the numbers, then what happens to that human, the couple of humans or one human that is left working over there in a couple of more years? Is that human even going to have a job anymore? Will there be a job available to them to go get? And what happens in 5 more years, 10 more years, 2 more years, when my child is now either in high school or coming out of high school and wants to find their first job? Where are they going to go? The only option they're going to have available for them is to collect a universal basic income, which will have biological health care requirements attached to it, where if the government tells you you have to take vaccines, you have to take vaccines. If the government tells you you got to go see the psychiatrist on this date, you'll have to go see that psychiatrist on that date. If the government tells you you got to show up for your monthly blood tests to provide that biological data for this bioeconomy in order to receive your universal basic income, because it's the only opportunity that you have as a teenager coming out of high school, can't get no work nowhere because self-checkouts already took it over. My parents supported the self-checkouts that took over my job the entire time they were taking over my job. The only option that will be left will be that universal basic income with healthcare requirements, like taking vaccines, giving blood, giving tissue samples, testing medication. This is going to be the only thing available for our children, because the parents right now are not thinking, and they're just going to this self-checkout because it's saving them 5-10 minutes off of their day to go to the self-checkout rather than stand in line for 5-10 minutes waiting to do the person-to-person checkout to give that person the numbers, because they see the numbers. They see how many people are going to these self-checkouts versus how many people are going to the person-to-person checkout. And right now, the person is becoming obsolete because everybody wants to save time, so they're running over here. So if you're a parent and you're currently using these self-checkouts, just be aware. You're selling your child's future out. You're creating an environment. You're contributing to them creating an environment where there will be no physical human jobs available for our children to be able to get their first job and start earning their own first paychecks. They will be stuck as a slave to the government and the medical system through the government, because they will be required to provide genomic and biological data in order to receive their universal basic income. So if you're a parent watching this video and you've never thought about that way, I hope you hear me. And for the love of God, I hope you choose and decide to stop supporting these self-checkouts and giving them the numbers to make them more popular than that 1 or 2 humans that are standing over at the person-to-person checkout waiting for humans to come interact with them and give them the.
Good morning, all, and welcome to the Biomanufacturing and Bioeconomy Summit. I'm Michelle Rozo from the National Security Council. We are delighted to have you all here to celebrate the signing of the President's recent executive order to launch a national biotechnology and biomanufacturing initiative. We will begin today with a bioeconomy roundtable chaired by Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, Alondra Nelson, Director of the National Economic Council, Brian Deese, and Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, Jake Sullivan. It is my pleasure to turn the floor to Dr. Alondra Nelson.
Delight to be able to be together to celebrate this great occasion, and thank you all so much for being here. As Dr. Rozo mentioned, I have the great privilege of leading the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, or OSTP, where we work to maximize the benefits of science and technology to advance health, prosperity, security, environmental quality, and justice for all of America. On Monday, as another example of President Biden's transformative leadership in the space of science and technology, he issued an ambitious executive order on advancing biotechnology and biomanufacturing innovation for a sustainable, safe, and secure American bioeconomy. This executive order represents the work of many people over many years, including many of you who've worked tirelessly to bring us to this point. I would like to take this moment to, in particular, to thank Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, who's with us, and Representative Deborah Ross of North Carolina for their leadership and work in this space, as well as Secretary Becerra. He'll join us soon, and Secretary Jennifer Granholm as well for her leadership. And thank you to my colleagues, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and National Economic Council Director Brian Deese and their teams at the NSC and NEC, respectively, for their partnership in driving the President's vision in this effort forward. This has been a momentous summer for science and technology policy. I've seen some of you over the summer, Keith, others at the CHIPS and Science Act signing. What an incredible few weeks this has been. And its integration into our economic and national security is really one of the really hallmarks of the policy work that we've been doing. When the President signed the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022, he set a bold vision for science, research, and innovation, including in the bioeconomy. The President's executive order implements provisions of the CHIPS and Science Act that will unlock the power of biotechnology and biomanufacturing to address climate change, create jobs, improve human health, and advance our safety. As you'll hear today, departments and agencies across the federal government are making big commitments to advance biotechnology and biomanufacturing, including a range of investments that foster bioinnovation and research and development across the U.S., that bring bioproducts to market more effectively, and that improve access to biotech products while envisioning how regulations can ensure safe production and delivery, and much, much more. A decade ago, during the Obama-Biden administration, OSTP laid the groundwork for this executive order when we released a national bioeconomy blueprint. I know some of y'all will remember that. One of the world's first strategies for biotechnology and biomanufacturing. And now, this biotechnology and biomanufacturing executive order will create a national research and development strategy for biotechnology, mapping out scientific advances that will lead us through the coming years, train a skilled and diverse workforce, prioritizing equity and supporting underserved communities, and expand our biomanufacturing capacity broadly so that every community across the United States can benefit from biotechnology. We now have the opportunity to tap into the potential that biotechnology holds for other aspects of our lives, such as cultivating agriculture that is more resilient to climate events, developing microbes to extract harmful chemicals from toxic waste sites, advancing our economic justice or environmental justice goals, making fuels, clothing, and building materials out of plants, and so much more. As the President so often says, with science and innovation, the possibilities are endless. And it's important to keep in mind along the way that we need to minimize the risks of unintended consequences from these powerful tools. The U.S. bioeconomy must model the norms of biosafety, biosecurity, and prudent and equitable technology governance that we'd like to see the world embrace, that we'd like to see embraced worldwide. To see these goals, we're calling on leaders in industry, academia, civil society, those of you here today, to partner with government to responsibly grow the biotechnology sector, to advance U.S. leadership in inventing and manufacturing biotechnology products that can help us solve some of our world's most pressing problems in ways that benefit everyone. So thank you all so much for being here again today as we begin this work together. You'll hear next from Director Brian Deese and Advisor Jake Sullivan, who will tell you about how biotechnology will bolster our economy and our national security. Then we'll have an opportunity to hear from all of our speakers in the roundtable discussion, folks seated here today, followed by panels later this morning. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to my colleague, Brian Deese, Director of the National Economic Council.
Thank you, Director Nelson, and thank you to all of my partners and colleagues in the executive branch. I want to start by thanking members of Congress from both houses and both parties for being extraordinary leaders in this effort. In particular, Representative Ross, thank you for being here today. And I want to say particular thanks to Senator Warner, who, in addition to being a leader on this issue, has been a leader and a partner in passing historic legislation over the last couple of months, and without his efforts, we would not be where we are today. As Alondra just mentioned, we're at a transformational moment for the bioeconomy, and we see this intersection between innovation and biotechnology and the economic opportunity and the economic challenges that we face as a country. And what I want to underscore here is that our effort as an executive branch and as a government is squarely focused on taking those innovations in biotechnology and weaving them into the core of our economic strategy for the country. And importantly, we are poised to meet this moment as a country. This administration, this president has talked a lot about needing a modern American industrial strategy. And the hallmarks of an industrial strategy center on public investment in infrastructure, secure strategic supply chains, developing critical industries, and in supporting industrial modernization in all of the country and bringing all people into that process. And because of the progress that we have made in passing, in particular, 3 foundational laws over the past year, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act that Director Nelson just spoke to, and the Inflation Reduction Act, we're now in a position to move out in a historic way against a modern American industrial strategy, and the bioeconomy can be at the center of that. We see direct benefits for the bioeconomy, particularly in this legislation, most notably in the CHIPS and Science Act. There are specific supports for the biotech agenda through expansion of research into the biosciences, including biomanufacturing, and in particular the connections between biotech and environmental programs, which we will talk a lot about today. But I think importantly, the CHIPS and Science Act also goes beyond R&D. It supports commercialization of new projects, processes and technologies, scale up, which we know often becomes a key rate limiter in this space, support of small and medium-sized entrepreneurs and innovators, some of whom we will hear from today, and also improving our data, our analytic tools, so that we as a government are able to be foot forward on this issue. And as we use these specific tools, we are going to focus our efforts on the bioeconomy to drive forward 3 key elements of our overall economic agenda. Number 1, strengthen supply chains and lower prices. This is at the core of the president's focus and priority economically. And we can use advances in the bioeconomy through bio-based production of APIs, biomanufacturing facilities that don't rely on foreign suppliers, biomining of rare earth elements to create more secure supply chains and actually reduce costs across time and reduce price pressures in our economy. Number 2, expand domestic manufacturing capacity. For those of you who didn't hear the president yesterday, he is quite passionate about the idea that who said that in America we can't have a strong, robust, and growing manufacturing sector? And biomanufacturing has the potential to be at the lead of that. Biomanufacturing depends on local feedstocks. So it will create real impact to create place-based economic opportunity around biomanufacturing activity in communities throughout the nation. And it has the potential to touch every region of this country. And I think that the diversity of the participants who have come here today to Washington from every corner of the country helps to underscore that point. And number 3, it will create jobs and it will strengthen the diversity of the bioeconomy itself, including by supporting a diverse workforce, ensuring that the benefits are spread to parts of our country that have enormous economic opportunity and assets to bring to this effort, but have not yet been dealt into this game. So we know that things are moving fast. We know that the pace of innovation is moving at lightning speed. Our executive order and the structure of how we're approaching this as a government is intended to get us into that game and moving at that speed, and also to make sure that these advances help to advance the economic agenda as well as the national security agenda of the country. And it is with that I will have the pleasure of turning it over to my colleague, Director Jake Sullivan. See, you're smart.
Thanks, Brian. I'm gonna stay seated in part because
a little less efficient.
in part because after I just make a few opening comments. I have the privilege to bring some of our other colleagues into the conversation on the national security implications of the biotechnology executive order and the strategy that Brian and Alondra have already laid out so well. You've heard from Alondra and from Brian what this revolution in biotechnology and how we harness it will mean for American science and innovation, for American workers, and for the American economy. I just want to talk for a minute about what it will mean for American national security and, frankly, for our place in the world. This week's actions, from our perspective, reinforce key themes in our national security strategy: how we invest in the technologies of the future, and how, alongside our allies and partners, we stay ahead of the curve and maintain our innovation edge. And just to take a step back for a moment, I want to underscore, just as Brian did, the kind of core premise of our economic policy is this new industrial strategy. A core premise of our national security approach is the deep intersection between domestic policy and foreign policy. And in particular, a recognition that maintaining and strengthening our comparative geostrategic advantage abroad rests on replenishing, reinvigorating our own reservoir of strength here at home. And biotechnology is central to that. Over the last 2 decades, we've learned the hard way what it means to play catch-up in emerging technologies. We've seen this in the semiconductor manufacturing space. We've seen it in advanced telecommunications, and we won't and can't let that happen when it comes to biotech. Now, much of the innovation in biotechnology and biomanufacturing rests in the private sector and in the academic sector, and that is where it belongs. Government is not going to invent the things we need and is not going to grow them to scale from lab to fab. But government can be a partner and a supporter of the private sector and our researchers, our academic researchers, so that it plays its proper role in a strong, robust, resilient ecosystem for biotechnology and biomanufacturing. And the president talks with great passion about the kinds of investments and the kind of leadership that the U.S. government has historically shown and the partnership it has had with every aspect of the American technology and innovation ecosystem to effectively drive forward the kinds of breakthrough innovations and scaled up biomanufacturing that has made the United States the world's leader. And this is why you will hear today, and you will have heard over the course of the last few days, the significant investments that we're making, not just from our health, energy, and science departments and agencies, but also from security-focused departments like the Pentagon. At the same time, we're also focused on making sure all of this reflects our values, because we are up against competitors in the world who have a different view of the norms and values that relate to science and innovation. And that means coordinating frameworks for privacy and ethics, rationalizing regulations, and of course, doing what we need to do to accelerate the lab to fab life cycle, taking great ideas and making great products, and doing so in a way that lifts up and empowers workers in this country, working families in this country, at the same time as we're continuing to break through new scientific barriers. We also have to remain cognizant of the risks that biotechnology can pose, including lab safety and security, and that is why we are so focused on the biosecurity elements of the overall biotechnology and biomanufacturing agenda. So we know we've got our work cut out for us, especially in a sector as fast-paced as biotechnology, but we also know that we simply have to make the necessary investments to keep running faster than any of our competition, and frankly, then we have to outpace the challenges that we are constantly trying to confront and to effectively overcome. So as we move on to the Q&A part of this session, I'd just like to make sure that over the course of the next 45 minutes, you all get to hear from the full breadth of the U.S. government and other key stakeholders in this common effort, because there are so many people on the front lines of this issue. And I have the privilege of being able to pose questions to our Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, our Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kath Hicks, our NSF Director, Ponch, and Senator Warner. And Senator Granholm, I just want to start with you. Obviously, the Department of Energy has historically been on the forefront of it, and under your leadership has never been more poised to play a central role in ensuring that the vision that's been sketched out in this executive order and this strategy gets brought to life. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to give us a sense of how you see things from your perspective and what it is that the department is doing under your leadership.
Great. Thank you, Director Sullivan. Obviously, as the Secretary of Energy, I'm really focused on climate. And the president has this very large goal of getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero by 2050. So what does that mean? That means with those goals, and now with the resources that have been supplied by the bills that Brian mentioned, we are excited to be able to move forward in this. Obviously, this initiative, this whole of government initiative, will boost innovation, energy innovation, clean energy innovation. Obviously, it will help to lead America, to your point, in across the world in science and technology. It's going to grow biomanufacturing, which means jobs in the United States, all kinds of jobs for all kinds of people in all pockets of the country. And it will create and train the next generation of scientists. The global market for clean energy technologies will be $23 trillion by 2030. And you better believe the United States wants to secure a big piece of that, making those technologies, researching them, developing them here at home. With DOE's, from DOE's perspective, just to give you a quick overview, we announced yesterday, actually, $178 million in awards for bioenergy research and development projects, and that's on top of an additional $220 million that we've committed this upcoming fiscal year to support domestic biomanufacturing. We have 17 national laboratories, all of them involved in some way in this effort. We've got those national labs have huge tools that many in this audience and around the table here know very well, including on the health side, tools, quantum-enabled tools that'll allow us at the subatomic level to visualize the complex processes of cells, for example. I'm super pleased that you're going to be hearing from Dr. Jerry Richmond, who's our Undersecretary for Science and Innovation in the next panel, because she oversees those 17 national labs. We are also very excited to be able to use our program offices as well to partner in this process. I love that Dr. Holgram is here with LanzaTech, who has been a partner with our bioenergy technology office in furthering fuels like sustainable aviation fuels with her innovations. We obviously know that all of the tools that we have, the offices that we have, the funding that we have is going to address climate change. I mean, it just will, especially in the transportation sector, which is one of the hardest to decarbonize that we have not cracked the code on yet. And this is why sustainable fuels are just absolutely critical. I feel, to your point in introducing me, that this is just an amazing moment for all of us as we move forward with all the tools that have been passed thanks to the leadership of the members of Congress who are here, thanks to the advocacy of many of those who are in this audience, thanks so much to the ability for us over the next 10 years, because these tools have been given to us for 10 years at least, to be able to invest and make America lead again. And I'm so glad that the Department of Energy has a big role in that.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And let me turn it over to Deputy Secretary Hicks. Kath, I know that DOD is announcing some significant investments and initiatives today, and I want to bring you into the conversation from the Pentagon's perspective. So over to you.
Sure. Thank you very much to Jake and for the whole White House team here for the amazing work you've done to get us to this point. At the Defense Department, this moment in the bioeconomy matters for a lot of reasons. First, we know that biotechnology and biomanufacturing have transformative potential for our mission at DoD to defend the nation. It helps us improve capabilities, solve logistics challenges in ways that are sustainable, to Secretary Granholm's point, and to protect our people. And of course, we know that strategic competitors like China are themselves prioritizing these technologies. They want to displace U.S. leadership and they want to challenge our competitiveness. Under Secretary Austin's leadership at DOD, we know, though, that we have what it takes here in the U.S. to really foot stomp what Jake said earlier. We have here the ability, the ingenuity, the resolve to lead the way, and we have the right kind of innovation ecosystem to make it happen. So what can DOD do to help in this space? Well, over the next 5 years, DOD will be investing nearly $1.5 billion to expand U.S. bioindustrial manufacturing infrastructure, strengthen biosecurity and cybersecurity at those facilities, and use biotechnology to bolster our supply chains. Our goal really is to help be a key catalyst for a domestic bioindustrial manufacturing base and more quickly turn basic and applied research into operational prototypes and reliable, reproducible products that can be made at scale. We believe these investments will incentivize biotech innovation and manufacturing capacity for products important both for commercial and defense supply chains, such as critical chemicals for lubricants, energetics, and fuels. This investment really builds on a history of groundbreaking DoD investment in the biotech space. You can think about DARPA's work 10 years ago that kickstarted a rapid response mRNA vaccine platform for infectious diseases, or more recently funding that the department has provided for some of the early wastewater assessment work for COVID, which has great applications for force protection against the coronavirus or future pandemics, and has offered spin-off potential for U.S. and overseas communities grappling with bio threats. And I also understand, I think we have here with us today 2 of DoD's 9 manufacturing innovation institutes, BioMade and BioFab USA. So thank you to them for all the great work they're doing. Going forward, we expect our focus on biotechnology and biomanufacturing to be transformative for what we do at DoD for our forces. Let me just give you an example of some of the things that are already happening. At DARPA, they're looking at spraying an algae-based substance on a patch of dirt and watching it grow in a matter of minutes into a landing pad hard enough to safely take off and land a helicopter. That is game-changing for us, for distributed forces who are operating from remote islands in places like the Pacific or other austere environments. Or using bio-enabled manufacturing to resupply and reinforce, for example, Army and Marine Corps units spread out on islands across half a hemisphere so they can operate and be sustained no matter what an adversary might do. And by the way, that is a much more sustainable approach from a climate perspective. Or using biotechnology to make advanced sensors that are smaller, lighter, more efficient, and less expensive than what we might build mechanically to detect and warn, for instance, that a chemical or a biological agent has been released. Those examples aren't science fiction, I think, as the folks in this room know. Like the institutions, companies, and agencies represented here today, they're proof of one of America's greatest strategic assets, and that's our incredibly vibrant innovation ecosystem. It's the envy of the world, and we want to help keep it that way. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kath. It's interesting. Anytime you hear about a particular application, it really just kind of comes to life. The whole thing is like, holy cow, that's pretty awesome. Panch, the National Science Foundation has been a foundational pillar of biotech innovation for decades, but I know you guys are not resting on your laurels, and you're hard at work on every element to this. So let me turn it over to you to talk through how you see this from where you sit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sullivan, and to Dr. Dees and Dr. Lenson. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join all of you today. I'm very grateful to the President for the executive order yesterday. I think this is a very important moment. And this moment is characterized by the fact that it not only is, as you all outlined, that the tremendous amount of investments that are going to be made all over the globe in this area and how we need to bring out these technologies of the future, and we be in the vanguard of innovation. And so this is a very important moment for us to take all the work that we have done, as you said, Jake, over the last several decades, and we are ready. And we've got a number of things, all the ingredients are there, and we are now making it into some food products already, if you want to put it that way. But now, how do we scale that? How do we strengthen it, scale it, speed it up? And that's this moment. It's a very, very important moment. I like in these kinds of situations to talk about show and tell. It's best way of explaining that this is not just, something that we are making it up. But there is a good example right now in this table for me to show and tell about NSF's investments over the decades. That is Ginkgo Bioworks. So right here, Jason Kelly. Let me walk you through Jason's life story, right? I will spare the first many years, but it's important to know that in early 2000s, NSF funded Jason as a graduate research fellow, right? And then his investigators, Tom Knight and Drew Endy, were also invested in terms of NSF research projects. Now, in mid-2000s, we invested in the Synthetic Biology Engineering Center called SynBerg at MIT, and Jason and Rashma Shetty were both graduate students in that. And then they spun out this company, Ginkgo Bioworks, with their advisor, Tom Knight, and then NSF supported again with the SBIR Phase 1, Phase 2A, and Phase 2B. And then they secured, of course, venture investments with support from other SBIR investments too, venture investments, and today they're a $15 billion company. Now, this is what NSF is about. Ideas, people, and therefore, ultimately outcomes of the kinds that Ginkgo is. What NSF is going to do and is doing is to see how do we scale this. It's not how do we get tens of thousands of Jasons, unleashed, if you want. And that's what NSF is about. And I just want to assure you that the investments that we have made in Biology Directorate, and we're making in Biology Directorate, and we are intensifying it even more. Engineering focus, if you look at our Engineering Research Center announcements that we have made, Science and Technology Center announcements that we have made, you will find bio, ag, biomedicine, health, all as focus areas of what NSF is doing. And let's be very clear, this is not just about biology and computing and engineering, as important as they are, mathematical, physical sciences. It's also about the social, behavioral, economic sciences. And that's where NSF brings the fusion of all of these disciplines to make sure that when we invested heavily in the COVID early testing and COVID vaccine and COVID, all of the work that we did in CRISPR and the bacteria in Yellowstone, which came to, help us in the COVID moment, these are things that have to be at the convergence of all the disciplines to actually get the benefits out. And I'm very grateful also to the partnership with Secretary Granholm and the Department of Energy, amazing partnerships with the Department of Defense, amazing partnerships, and Department of Agriculture and USDA. I mean, we partnered with them in AI institutes. We have 4 AI institutes now, each $20 million scale. All of them focus on the future of agriculture and smart agriculture and the many technologies that are coming out of that. So whether it is health or biomedicine or climate change or technology related to agriculture and more, we are ready, we stand ready. So we stand ready to invest in more people, more ideas, and of course relating in translations, and that's why we're excited about the TIP Directorate. And I'm glad that Assistant Director Irvin Gianchandani is going to be in the next panel talking about TIP Directorate and what it does in terms of regional innovation engines everywhere, I-Core programs, as well as the IUCRC's Indus University Research Center programs, so that we can scale this. And so I say we are committed to strengthening at speed and scale. Thank you.
So, Senator Warner, that is a tough act to follow. You've been at the forefront of technology and innovation in the private sector as a senator throughout all of your years. You're also, of course, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So I think you uniquely have a perspective on the intersection of biotechnology innovation as it affects our economy, our society, and our security. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to give us your perspective as we move forward here.
Well, thank you, Jake, and thank you for including me. And I do think we should include stock options with all the NSF grants to these young researchers. And let me go ahead and give Jason a shout out as well, as we on the Intelligence Committee have started to look at this issue. He's somebody we've turned to. Let me make a couple of preface comments. One, since there's not many other members of Congress here, I'm proud to say that I think the Intelligence Committee is the last functioning bipartisan committee in the whole Congress. That's a low bar to get over, I understand, but it is something that we claim. And also, Jake, as you indicated, almost by default, at least on the Senate side, we've become the Technology Committee, because working with our partners in the Intel community, we have to look at what's going on all around the world. And in particular, our competition with China. And I think I always try to make the point when I mention China, because I think a failure to mention this plays into the CCP's agenda, that our beef, at least from the Intel side, is not with the Chinese people or the Chinese diaspora anywhere around the world. It is with the CCP and Xi Jinping's leadership, which we know from their own documents, China 2025, the Standards 2035, their goal in a field like bio is not to simply lead, but to dominate. And I think both Brian and Jake have made comments, this is not about who only makes the innovation, but who sets the rules, standards, protocols, which is something, again, that I think we in America and kind of our allied nations, the West writ large, kind of always presumed that we would set the standards on. I think our work has been productive. One, even under the last administration, our Intel committee was the first to kind of bring together people across the private sector and the government writ large on the question around 5G. As an old telecom guy, it blew me away that when not only did we see China have the leading player in Huawei, and candidly, no American competitor, there were European and Korean competitors, but no competitor, but also we were seeing China flood the zone on standard setting around 5G. And I think, again, candidly, this is one area where the last administration, working again with the Biden administration going forward, I think we've made major strides forward in 5G. In one of the things we talk a lot about on the CHIPS bill is chips, but there is also $1.5 billion in there in next generation wireless and so-called ORAN, Open Radio Access Network, something terribly important where we need to take the lead. Secondarily, and want to again commend Brian and the whole team on the CHIPS Act, but again, it was John Cornyn and I and a group of us on the Intel committee who said, hey, we saw where we're catching up in wireless. We are starting to do the same, if we're not careful, in semiconductors and in the whole supply chain. And kudos again to the leadership of the administration. The CHIPS bill, I think, will go down as one of the most significant pieces of legislation the president has signed. The sausage making was more ugly than it needed to be, but that's just the nature of the beast. But it is law right now, and it is an area. And again, I want to commend Jake on this, where we have to think about this not just only from an American perspective, but with our partners around the world, because this needs to be a collaborative effort. The reason why I got the invite today is because the Intel committee's, frankly, next two deep dives or focus is going to be in biotech, synthetic biology, biomanufacturing, an area where I hope we can build that same kind of bipartisan consensus, that we can work with the administration, that we can work with the private sector on how we look at this competition with China and how we can build not only domestically, but around the world. And our other, Jennifer, is to actually look at advanced energy. We may not, to make sure we keep that bipartisan, we may not call it climate change, we may just call it advanced energy, but whatever it takes. And so our hope is that we can work again with the administration and those of you in the room as we try to develop what the theories of the case are going to be, what kind of governmental investment. My personal belief is that the kind of, and I know this used to be kind of a dirty word, industrial policy, but quasi-industrial policy, 21st century industrial policy that we've seen in chips, we may need to do in bio. We may need to do in advanced energy. We may need to do in AI or quantum. And building that bipartisan coalition is terribly important. Last point I'll mention, and Brian went through the litany of the great work the administration has done and that the president has put, signed into law. One he didn't mention was the American Rescue Plan, which real time in the last few months has been putting out some of these development grants And I want to give a shout out to our friends from Virginia, Richmond, Petersburg, VCU, Continuous Manufacturing in the biospace was one of those recipients. And I think is going to be a great asset to bear. So, there's been so many, Brian, it's hard to keep them all on your list. But I'd add ARP to the list as well. Thank you, Jake.
Well, thank you, Senator. And with that, Brian, let me turn it over to you to take us into the next segment to the discussion.
Great. So we're going to try to get the economic opportunity, the economic challenges here on the table, and jump right into it. I'll just start by framing with one fact. BCG looked into this and said that they project that the economic opportunity in the bioeconomy is on the order of $30 trillion by the end of the decade. It's a really large number, and it's hard to get your head around. In fact, so large that I asked the team to go back and make sure that that was actually right. But to put it in perspective, the entire GDP of the country is about $21 trillion. So we're talking about over a decade growing in an industry that's about 150% of the entire U.S. economic output today. So this is big stuff. To get this on the table, I want to start by bringing our three voices to talk about innovation here. Dr. Holmgren, Dr. Chakrabarty, Dr. Kelly. And we're running behind on time, so I'm going to ask you an unfair thing to do, which is, but you guys pitch investors all the time, so this should be straightforward for you to do. Which is, if you guys can each, sort of in rapid session, give us your 2 to 3 minutes on the economic opportunity and what you think is necessary to keep this process of innovation alive and going. We'll start with you, Dr. Holmgren.
Thank you very much. I can't say enough and commend the President in issuing this executive order, which acknowledges that successfully scaling innovation takes an all-of-government approach. We cannot underestimate the importance of coordination between programs, departments, and agencies in accelerating commercialization, impact, and importantly, education and access. In support of this, I have set a grand challenge for myself and for my team. We commit to ensuring that by 2040, every U.S. consumer, regardless of where they are from and how much they earn, will have direct access to a sustainable version of every product they purchase. We must not let sustainable products be limited to the wealthy. They must dominate high-volume commodity products and be made at the least cost and be accessible to all. We depend on fossil resources for our everyday lives, though these are deteriorating our climate and polluting our air and water. To successfully transition away from virgin fossil inputs, we need scalable alternatives, and I believe biotechnology can be the engine that drives this change. This new carbon economy is a trillions of dollars opportunity and brings high-paying jobs, particularly in manufacturing and rural community. LanzaTech leverages robust industrial biotechnology using a naturally occurring organism to transform waste carbon through a process called gas fermentation. Biotechnology is economic and scalable because it is inherently flexible. Mixed waste streams, agriculture waste, municipal waste, and industrial carbon emissions can all be used as low-cost feedstocks. CO2, with the addition of green hydrogen, can make an unlimited supply of sustainable product. We operate 3 commercial plants that convert industrial emissions into ethanol, and that ethanol has been used to make clothing, packaging, sustainable aviation fuel, etc. Imagine polyester from a dress made from recycled carbon from a steel mill. This is not science fiction. We are doing this commercially today, partnering with consumer brands who want these materials in supply chains, and we are leveraging existing infrastructure that allows rapid scale-up. With the production plants we have operating, we will have 200 million gallons of capacity and 1 million tons of annual CO2 mitigation in the next 10 years. It's 3 years, but thanks in large part to ambitious programs and funding assistance from key government agencies, and importantly, collaboration with national labs, we have built a comprehensive suite of genetic, tools and AI-based modeling for the first time to engineer biological factories to enable production of 100 different chemicals. Imagine that, 100 important chemicals from repurposed waste carbon. Thanks to this executive order and the IRA, we now have the foundation to dream bigger and bolder, ensuring the U.S. meets its emission targets while creating more reliable and sustainable supply chains. I thank you for the invitation to join.
Thank you for that. Dr. Kelly.
Well, I guess I'll start by maybe reinforcing Pancho's point. Ginkgo simply would not be here without early government funding. So as you're thinking about industrial policy, that's something that we're not going to forget now in the position we're in today. Today Ginkgo is the largest designer of synthetic DNA in the world. What does that mean? It means you go on a computer, you type ATC, GGG, you hit print, and a piece of DNA gets printed out of our labs in Boston or partner companies like Twist in California. We then take that DNA and we put it into the genome of a cell. Think like installing an app on your phone. And it makes the cell do something new, right? And that's our business. We do that as a service for customers. So what types of applications are we seeing our customers ask for? Well, we work with Bayer Crop Science on a project, $100 million project, to engineer microbes to produce fertilizer for crops. Well, they take nitrogen right out of the air and feed it to the crop. If you were successful at this, that's 1% to 2% of global greenhouse gas. It's a big supply chain problem, as we know today in fertilizers. That's one project. We have a project with a company called Alonia that's asked us to engineer microbes to break down PFAS. This is something where the administration's really led with the EPA to get this chemical out of our water sources, right? And we work with companies that want rare disease treatments to rare earth element recovery. The range on bioengineering is unbelievable, right? And to me, this means that the DNA age that's coming is going to be more important than the electronics age that we saw over the last 75 years. While biology is programmable, like electronics and computers, it's important to note that it's not predictable like computers. And we saw this with COVID-19. Biology can get out of control. And so it was great to hear the comments about biosecurity and biosafety. I think this is going to be absolutely critical as we do this. And we've been lucky to work with the CDC, with their airports program that caught the first cases of BA2 and BA3 entering the US that were sequenced. This is the beginnings of like a hurricane warning system for infectious disease. We have to have this stuff as we enter the age of programmed biology. We work with HHS through Operation Expanded Testing. This is, in my opinion, one of the most important biosecurity programs in the country. It kept schools open through the Omicron wave. It's rolled out nationwide, available for free in schools. Enormously important. The last thing I want to say is, as we're building this technology, it's extremely important that we do it with care. It was excellent to hear the comments about wanting to share the benefits of this technology with the wider public. I think it's also important to note we want the wider public to participate in this technology. We spend a lot of time on literacy. We teach people to read and write. We need bioliteracy. We need to teach people to read and write DNA so that they're not just receiving the benefits of this, they're the actual creators of this in the future. And so I want to say, the DNA age is coming, and I want to thank you all for your leadership in making sure that it's built on U.S. values. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Chakrabarty.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Jason to say thank you for all the work you all are doing to make this possible. You may not know Solugen very well, so I'll give a brief history of what we do. Our mission is to decarbonize the chemicals industry, a $6 trillion industry that's responsible for up to 6% of emissions, global emissions. But the way we got to where we are today is a bizarre story, and why I think the work that we're doing with this executive order is so important. I'm actually a physician scientist by training, and I've been studying pancreatic cancer for many years and discovered this reaction in pancreatic cancer that makes something called hydrogen peroxide. Maybe you've seen it. It's the little brown bottle on the pharmacy store. I thought it was interesting, a little bit of a discovery that we had, but then it was this poker game. I was sitting next to my best friend, Sean Hunt. He was a PhD in chemical engineering from MIT. He was working on the production of hydrogen peroxide at massive industrial scales using really petrochem processes. What we realized at that point was if you married biology, the enzyme side of what I was doing, with the scaled side of petrochemistry, you can create a whole new way of making molecules that's more sustainable and actually can drop costs. So obviously this idea was fun for us, so we went to Home Depot and we bought PVC pipes and we built our first reactor. And that little first reactor started cash flowing us about $12,000 a month within 3 months. So we had this bigger vision that what we did was we miniaturized chemicals production. We miniaturized it to a point where a PVC reactor could be profitable. And so fast forwarding a little bit, we've raised now, we haven't announced the full amount, but we've raised about $1 billion to date and have close to $1 billion in cash, where what we're doing is creating these mini mills for the chemicals industry. So if you guys remember in the steel industry, there used to be, these giant steel complexes that now are replaced by mini mills. You see these steel mini mills everywhere. Why not for the chemicals industry? And that's exactly what biomanufacturing can enable. If you look at what Solugen's done, we have a commercial facility in Houston. We have a second facility in West Texas, and we're building our third facility in Marshall, Minnesota. Each one of these are actually built in neighborhoods that are not very well served. These are neighborhoods that have the median income below the poverty line. And in fact, what we've done in Houston, we've now created 150 jobs because of the biomanufacturing capabilities of marrying biology with petrochemistry. In fact, that neighborhood, our Houston neighborhood, is where I grew up. I immigrated from India. We were very poor, very, very poor. And that was the neighborhood that we grew up in. And so for me, the biomanufacturing, the bioeconomy is not just about the ability to engineer biology. It's about the ability to engineer biology and give this opportunity to the next generation of people that can create companies and create more clones of Jason. And that's where we want to go.
Thank you for that. To a point Jake made earlier, if you had any doubt where the innovative potential is going to come, I think you just put that to rest. That this is the type of innovation and possibility that we need more of in the country. And so, connected to that, I want to turn to Dr. Locascio and talk about we've heard now in a number of parts the importance of standards, both to unlock the economic possibility but also maintain security. You sit right at the center of that. So give us your perspective on it.
Thank you for that. After hearing these exciting innovation stories, you might think measurement and standards are boring, but they're really not. They're very exciting, as we just said. And it is a top priority of mine to ensure U.S. leadership in international standards development for critical and emerging technology areas. And biotechnology, of course, is no exception. And it does require an appropriate balance as we're considering it. So at the Department of Commerce, we're focused on promoting biotechnology and biomanufacturing innovation, of course, while taking the necessary steps to secure and protect the ecosystem by reducing the risk and safeguarding the U.S. bioeconomy writ large. So one of the critical approaches to achieving this balance is really through the development of standards. And thank you, Senator Warner, for bringing that up and where we are today and how that plays out on the international scene, which is very delicate at the moment. Standards level the playing field so that the best and most innovative solutions can really get to market and be developed into products and services. And as a bioengineer myself, I know and understand the importance of measurement and standards and how the impact they have on really driving innovation. As a matter of fact, I would say that no discovery has ever been made without the ability to push our capability to measure it, right? So if we can't measure it, we can't make that discovery. So at NIST, we work on a whole bunch of different types of standards. I'm just going to mention them quickly. Standard materials, standards data, and documentary standards that Senator Warner pointed out. Materials standards are called reference materials. They are used by companies nationally and globally to benchmark measurements, to test their new techniques or technology to see if it really works, and ultimately to provide confidence that what they are measuring is right. And so NIST, for instance, has developed a monoclonal antibody standard, and that's used by biopharma really all over the world to validate their manufacturing processes. And we're also harnessing the power of engineering biology to develop standard biotechnology platforms in sectors beyond healthcare, and that's sustainable biofuels and agriculture, chemicals, plastics, and others. And we're also working on data standards, which are essential to ensure that biological data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. We work with HHS in this area, while also having appropriate security controls. And then finally, I briefly want to touch on this really important issue of documentary standards, which are developed by consensus in large international standards committees, trusted partnerships are essential for U.S. standards leadership. And we cannot lose our place in the world on international standards committees at this very, very delicate time where leadership and presence and influence is so important globally. And I just wanted to mention in that regard, NIST is the convener for the U.S. Technical Advisory Group to the ISO Technical Committee on Biotechnology. And that committee is setting the standards that will help U.S. biomanufacturing be competitive all over the globe. And so it's a critical work that we're doing. We're engaged with really everybody here in doing that work. We engage with industry, academia, government agencies, through these standards committee, through research consortia, and of course through Manufacturing USA institutes, and some were mentioned already here today. And NIMBLE, the Biomanufacturing USA Institute in the Department of Commerce, is part of that. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks for allowing me to speak about standards and these close, trusted partnerships that we have with everybody around the table are so important in this new initiative moving forward. And happy to be here. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. To close out this section, I want to ask Representative Ross to come in here. You've led on this issue in the House. You come from a state that is leading in this area. I would just love to get your perspective on the economic opportunity and what it's going to take for us to unlock this.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for including me in this. And thank you, Secretary Granholm, for amplifying me. I want to say, though, I have to take a little bit of exception with Senator Warner. The House Science, Space, and Technology Committee is the most bipartisan committee. And it is a committee where everything is a bipartisan bill or amendment, and we voice vote. We've only had one fight, and that was where two members were fighting over who got credit, as opposed to the issue. And that is a wonderful thing for everything that you do, because if in the House we can all have a common purpose in advancing the sciences, that is going to be good for the future of our country. And on the House side, I picked being on that committee because I represent the Research Triangle Park, and I represent 7 colleges and universities, including 2 HBCUs, 1 women's college with a very strong STEM program, and the largest community college in the state of North Carolina. And North Carolina and the Research Triangle, with all of the wonderful companies and research institutions, is leading on innovation. But the thing we're going to need to do to realize President Biden's vision and all of our vision is to train up the people who are going to do that manufacturing. And that is the job of our community colleges. That is the job of some of our undergraduate programs. And that is why I am so excited that the science part of the CHIPS and Science Act is devoted to giving NSF the money to give grants to all of these institutions of higher education. I'm an Ivy League grad. I love the Ivy League and the MITs of the world and the Stanfords of the world. But let me tell you, Wake Tech Community College has gotten 3 NSF grants that I have gone to with a big check and everything, including first generation community college students from the Latino community who didn't graduate from high school, getting apprenticeships and going directly to be able to work in manufacturing. And I will close with this. It is doing all that, but if we do not fix our immigration system, particularly for the dreamers and the documented dreamers, we are not going to have the next generation of the best and brightest innovators. It's got to be all in here, where everybody comes to the table and works on the ideas, and then we train the workforce to be able to do that manufacturing, good paying jobs in all of our communities so that everyone can benefit.
Thank you for that. I want to end this debate by saying the one thing I'm confident of is that there's no two set of counterpart committees that would spend their time fighting on who is more bipartisan. That I'm confident of. But I think it actually underscores a very serious point, which is for all of us, the potential of the CHIPS and Science Bill operates in making real the authorized funding that now needs to happen. It requires the standard setting and the forward-looking intelligence and balancing of security and standards that we've heard to unlock this economic opportunity. And the only way we're going to do that is by maintaining our focus on the economic opportunity and keeping the politics out of this to the maximum degree possible. So I very much thank both of you for being here and for all of you for the innovation that you're doing and your contributions here today. And with that, I'll pass it to you.
Right. Okay, so our last remarks in the roundtable are really Representative Ross really queued us up. We kind of are going to end where we began with really talking about the health and the science pieces of this. All of the biotechnology products that we've talked about today started here in the U.S. and really started initially with some health innovation, and we're going to begin the conversation talking about where we are now in that space. I'm going to begin with our extraordinary Secretary of HHS, Secretary Becerra, and I wanted to get started with you and ask you to speak about the implications of recent biotechnology for human health and how your team is leading in that space.
Dr. Nelson, thank you to everybody on this team. Thank you to the innovators out there. Thank you. I don't have to say much, whether it's the rapid antigen test, which was as basic a device as you can think of, to the mRNA vaccines that have saved millions of lives. Without biotech out there, you can imagine what the world would look like right now with COVID. And so it goes without saying that for the health space, you are indispensable, and we need to do this. And I believe what President Biden is doing, he's telegraphing a couple of things. Partnership, values, because as we work together, as we share what we know and what we do, we have to do it with those values in mind. And so I think it becomes really important how we launch on all these things. And I suspect probably the best thing for me to do is in telegraphing partnership to thank Jason, because he just shared one of his great scientists with us, Renee Wezergin, right? Wezergin. Yeah. You always forget there's nothing between the R and the G. Renee Wezergin is our new, just announced, inaugural director of ARPA-H. And just as Jason took her from DARPA, we got her back for ARPA-H. So, we're very much looking forward to sharing in so many different ways. And we're looking forward for you sharing as well in so many different ways. How can I say this? We want in. We want in, whether it's starting with the innovation, the investments, whether it's the breakthroughs, whether it's the actual application, we want in. I think the president is telegraphing, we want in. He's telling you, Cancer Moonshot, ARPA-H, RADx. Forgive me for all the alphabet soup designations, but it would take my 3 minutes to talk, just give you the actual names. But we want in. And how in do we want at HHS? Well, let me continue with the alphabet soups. NIH, CDC, BARDA, ASPR, FDA. And then let me focus finally, because I want to stay to time, PDUFA, MDUFA. We want in. You want in. We have a partnership. We share a lot. If we don't get something done real soon, we're going to share catastrophe together. We will have to lay off the people that let you harness innovation if we don't see Congress act soon. And I know that we have the Senator and the Congresswoman here who absolutely want to see us get that user fee bill done as quickly as possible. But I will tell you that this new generation of these user fees and the work that was done to sort of set the policy to calibrate it to the 21st century are going to let you go with us working with you in partnership. We don't want to regulate you. We want to partner with you. And I think that when you take a look at all of the different agencies within HHS, It's not just health. It's it's the security not just of your a next family and what you do on cancer or with that artificial limb. It's food security. It's climate security. We're part of global security because that next weapon may not be some mechanical device, but something you've insert inside a body. And so all of those things, we want to work with you on those. And at the end of the day, and I want to thank Lori for mentioning this, it is about standards because the ethics that will be involved in this partnership and the equity, and Congresswoman Roth, I thank you so much for that mention, I think will drive that leadership for the U.S. If we get the ethics and the equity right, we're not going to lose anything. We're just going to keep gaining the stars that you see in this room who come from all parts of the world to do the innovation and the breakthroughs here in the U.S. So HHS wants in, count us in this partnership and in these values. Back to you, Dr. Nelson.
Thank you so much, Secretary Becerra, and really for showing how, government institutions can be sites of innovation and catalysts for innovation. Really appreciate your leadership there. So we are really, really out of time, and so I regrettably are going to sort of ask questions quickly of our next three speakers and ask you all just to speak in turn. So Dr. Nina Tandon is here with us, who's the CEO of Epibone, and would love to hear from you, your perspectives on biotech and biomanufacturing for health. I'm going to introduce the other two speakers and allow you to wrap up. We also have Deputy Secretary of the USDA here, Jewel Brenna. We're delighted to have her. Would love to hear from you about how biotechnology holds promise for agriculture and the work that you and Secretary Vilsack are leading in that space. And the last word will go to Dr. Kathy Wotecki, my colleague on the PCAST, the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And as we ask PCAST to do, we'd love you to look to the horizon. Where are we headed next, Dr. Wotecki, and how should we be thinking about that in the space of science and health innovation in the bioeconomy? Thanks. Dr. Tandon?
Thank you. Despite the incredible advances in medical science over the past, throughout human history, we ended up with a situation in which the vast majority of us, 75% or more of us, will be eventually acquiring parts of our bodies that we weren't born with. Bone is the most transplanted human material after blood, and we are replacing millions of joints per year, oftentimes because of just a couple millimeters of damaged cartilage. I'm an electrical engineer, went to community college after Cooper Union and pivoted to this space, so thank you for your comments on that, and ended up in the lab of Bob Langer at MIT, which was a really wonderful place to explore this work. So the only way to get human bone until now is to cut it out of a human. What we do at Epibone is we take the cells that grew our bodies in the first place, repair our bodies every day, and extract them and put them into a biomaterial, culture them, and we've got, after 3 weeks, we can make bone, 4 weeks, we can make cartilage. And last year, we made history as the first biotechnology greenlit by the FDA to use this approach in humans. We have now successfully, as of August 25th, completed our phase 1/2 implantations, first in man, first in class therapy, really happy about that. We're painting a world, a picture of a world in which we don't need to replace parts of our bodies with metal, plastic. We can be the medicine. Okay, I'm trying to go really quickly here. The U.S. is poised to be a leader in this space for obvious reasons, historical reasons, and we have the key ingredients to keep our space as the front runner in spades. We are a magnet for talent and venture capital. However, policy can help us tip the balance to realizing our potential, and I see two key areas where we could really use help. Firstly, despite the fact that surgeons are allowed by the FDA to use banked bones for any of our 207 bones or 360 joints throughout our bodies, the FDA currently requires companies like ours to undergo lengthy 3-phase trials for each, or maybe even more than 207 trials in order to realize all the various products that we could. We have a platform technology patchwork regulation. And what this means, considering that OTAT has only approved 24 products in their history, that is a insurmountable kind of challenge. So what I would ask is for us to think holistically about a regulatory framework in which surrogate tissues and organs can be regulated as such. We are not a device, we are not a therapeutic, we are not a biosimilar. Secondly, one of the tenets of our field, and many of you would agree here, is that the process is the product. Meaning that we're very high touch, lots of human manipulation involved in producing these products, labor intensive. The labor intensiveness of living therapies translates to highly skilled jobs. The perishable nature of our products translates to local production. And the necessity of strict regulations and IP protection means that regional hubs will emerge to serve various geographies across borders. We are seeing Singapore position itself very strategically to service APAC by increasing investment in biomanufacturing capacity. I would like to see us be the world leader in export of human engineered tissues. So I firmly believe in a future in which we as humans can be our own medicine. Let us not replace parts of our bodies with parts cut out of ourselves and other people. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective, and so excited about this moment we all find ourselves in. Thank you.
USDA is absolutely thrilled to be a part of the historic investments in advancing biotechnology and biomanufacturing. And you think about how appropriate it is for USDA. George Washington Carver and his 300 uses for the peanut. He was the first biotechnologist. And so we have the history. We're just going to move forward. You know, importantly, this EO will mean that sourcing for industries doesn't have to rely upon overseas markets. It will give us an opportunity to support local rural economies right here at home. And of course, the investment of this administration in climate smart agriculture and forestry means we're producing things in more sustainable ways. Today, the Secretary is going to announce a huge opportunity, Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities, which will invest in the production of commodities using climate-friendly practices. It'll also allow for market opportunities for many of our farmers and our ranchers. USDA obviously has a huge footprint in this EO. We're training the next generation of biotechnologists. We've talked about youth engagement. We announced $68 million through the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative to train the next generation of researchers, educators, and extension professionals. I'm wearing green today, not because it's USDA colors, but I'm going to actually speak at a 4-H event. 4-H is the youth development arm of agriculture this evening. And it will just be wonderful to talk about our youth as the opportunities that they have to advance this exciting work that we're doing. USDA is also building new regulatory processes. We're trying to promote the safe innovation of agriculture and alternative foods. The USDA Bio Preferred program, which many people are aware of, it's going to advance the development and expansion of markets for bio-based products. We have a catalog of over 16,000 registered products. So this new investment of $10 million will support the scale-up of activities and studies on the benefits of bio-based products. Jason, and hopefully many of his clones, mentioned fertilizer production, and we will make a $500 million investment through our new program to support independent and innovative production of sustainable American fertilizer. We also joined the government-wide Sustainable Aviation Fuel Challenge, meeting that 100% demand of aviation fuel by 2050. We're partnering with DOT, with Energy to leverage 1 billion tons of sustainable biomass for domestic supply of fuels, chemicals, and materials. In terms of forestry, we announced $32 million for wood innovation and community wood grants. We're leveraging an additional $93 million to partner funds to develop new wood products that will enable effective use of U.S. forest resources. And then we're advancing opportunities for cellulosic biomaterial in developing carbon accounting standards from forest stewardship, the use of harvested wood products, and extending the life of wood in use, reuse, and recycling, and nurturing carbon to soil in a cradle-to-cradle life cycle analysis system. Excited to partner with the National Institutes of Health to ensure that data on persistent poverty can be integrated into cancer surveillance as part of the government-wide cancer moonshot efforts. And so that you can see that we're very invested. It's part of what we do at USDA. This work goes naturally. It's a natural fit with us. So we just applaud the president for the action that he has taken, and we're just excited to partner and be a part of this historic effort. Thank you.
Great. I'll wrap this one up for you, Dr. Nelson. The President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology is taking a deep look into the current state of biotechnology and biomanufacturing in the United States. and really endorses everything that we've heard about the enormous opportunity. And really, we are in the midst of a new industrial revolution. But we've identified that there are three key gaps that stand in the way of America's continued leadership in this rapidly growing market sector. And these are an inadequate capacity for scaling up new innovations to manufacturing scale, regulatory uncertainty that we've heard about, as well as an outdated national strategy. We're really pleased to see that the new executive order addresses several of these concerns. And the recently passed CHIPS and Science Act contains many relevant new programs and authorizes very badly needed funding. PCAST is hopeful that Congress will provide those funds, and we're going to be concentrating our work on identifying additional and very complementary steps that President Biden can take to further the adoption of biotechnology and further as well advanced biomanufacturing. So in closing, I wanted to mention that as a long-term faculty member and dean at a College of Agriculture at a land-grant university, the public universities are ready partners for biotechnology and biomanufacturing education, research, as well as economic development within their states. They already educate over 70% of the students seeking bachelor's degrees in the United States. And they also have a mission of service to the states in which they exist. So thanks so much for the opportunity to update you on what PCAST is looking at, and also to remind you about the role of public universities.
Thank you so much to PCAST for your leadership and your leadership in the academic sector. So we are at time. Dr. Rosso, are you going to wrap us up? Okay. I couldn't imagine a better start, a better kickoff to the President's visionary transformative executive order. Looking forward to working with all of you, and we will ask you to be back here. We're going to take a little break in 5 minutes or so. Okay. Thank you all very much, and to our panelists.
All right, after that terrific start, we are now going to dive into two areas of the initiative with two amazing panels. First, a discussion of how biotechnology can solve some of the most pressing global challenges, moderated by Dr. Kari Wolnitz. And second, a discussion of biomanufacturing and the vital task of moving from the lab to marketplace, moderated by Dr. Liz Reynolds. I'd like to now turn it over to Kari Wolnitz, Deputy Director for Health and Life Sciences of the Office of Science and Technology Policy.
All right, thank you. It's hard to follow that first panel, but we're going to see if we can keep the energy and excitement level up here. I don't think that will be hard, given who we've got represented. So nearly exactly 50 years ago, two scientists walked into a deli in Hawaii. I know that sounds like the beginning of a really terrible joke, but actually it's a story about the beginning of the biotechnology industry. For students of science history, you know that, of course, I'm referring to Drs. Boyer and Cohen. And over corned beef sandwiches, from what I understand, they hatched up an idea about moving genes from one living organism to another, on a foundation of many, many years of basic research involving many, many people, that is directly connected to the first recombinant drug of insulin, the first biotechnology company right here in the United States, Genentech, and straight to this panel that we've got here of really amazing folks. It's because science, at the end of the day, leads to solutions, and biotechnology is no exception to that. Biotechnology has the possibility, as you hear from our panelists, to really address some of our greatest societal challenges. But it is also important to recognize that biotechnology, like any technology, is a tool. And it's how we use it that really matters. So when you've got biotechnology, which is distributed equitably, where the products and benefits and people involved are really representative of all of the people in the United States and the world. When we have the time to carefully consider all of the ethical dimensions of the technology in question, when we ensure safety and security, as we talked about this morning, It's incredibly powerful. It's super cool. That's just my bias showing there. And it feels limitless, or at least limited only by the boundaries of the human imagination. Fortunately, there are no limits to the imaginative abilities of the folks represented on the panel today. And I'm going to give them very brief introductions that do not do justice to them as individuals or their accomplishments. But I trust you all know how to use Google. Or in a throwback to the 20th century, you could actually talk to them and find out more. But starting here at the far end, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Gilda Berabino, who's president of the Olin College of Engineering, and who is training the next generation of innovators, as well as being an innovator herself in the field of sickle cell disease. Ms. Ginger Krieg Dozier, welcome, who is an architect by training, who makes bioengineered bricks. I feel like I could talk to you all day because really, really extraordinary. Dr. Lisa Dyson, who is the founder and CEO of Air Protein, who is literally taking space-age technology into sustainable meat alternatives. Can't wait to hear more about that. Dr. Erwin John Chantani, did I come close? Assistant Director at NSF of the Directorate for Technology, Innovation and Partnerships. He leads the newly formed TIP Directorate, and we'll hear more about that. Mr. John Mello to my left here, President and CEO of Amyris, which is focused on using synthetic bio for clean, sustainable consumer products. And last but absolutely not least, to my immediate right, Dr. Jerry Richmond, who's the Undersecretary of Science and Innovation at the Department of Energy, who really oversees the innovation engine at DOE and is going to talk to us about the next-gen sustainable energy sources. So if we can launch right in, President Berabino, I'm going to turn to you first. So a lot of people think of biotech as being all about the life sciences, but really what we've heard today and really the horizon is all about how it's evolved into intersecting with engineering, with computational science, with mathematics. From where you sit, what does that cutting edge look like? And what does it mean for the potential of biotech to solve some of our biggest challenges?
Well, thank you, Dr. Wallenitz. You heard a lot of what it looks like in the innovative approaches that were discussed in our earlier session. And I want to bring our attention to our ability to develop and implement biotechnical solutions to global challenges is critically dependent upon foundational technical training that meets global bioeconomic and social needs. And this training must be agile, it must be steeped in innovation, and include design education, entrepreneurial education, and education on the ethical, responsible, and accessible use of technology. And how do we educate for innovation, social purpose, and development of inclusive, accessible solutions? The kind of technology where we bring together the biological sciences, engineering, and computer science. Well, we work collaboratively across disciplines and across sectors, academic, industry, government, and communities as co-creators. We entertain new ways of thinking and doing. We insist on cultural understanding. We ensure the inclusion of different technical perspectives and perspectives from individuals from different backgrounds. And we involve the communities we are serving in the design process. With this approach to training, students and the practitioners they will become will be equipped to identify needs, design collaboratively within economic and other constraints, understand and engage the global communities we aim to serve through biotechnology, and ultimately meet the increasingly complex global challenges we face today and in the future. Quickly, I want to tell you that recent reports on the bioeconomy by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine in 2020 and by Schmidt Futures in 2022 speak to the need to produce a technical and diverse workforce and the need to integrate technologies while working collaboratively across the sectors. They also acknowledge the range of opportunities that must be met with a talent pool reflective of society and a workforce that is becoming more brown and more female. Research shows that those from historically excluded groups are drawn to fields and careers that provide opportunities for societal impact to help others, to give back to one's community. Global challenges solved through biotechnical solutions is an attractor We will all benefit from bio-inspired pathways to attract, retain, and ensure success of all who have the capacity to create impactful solutions. And simply put, bringing these technologies together across disciplines and boundaries allows the breakthroughs that then position us to translate those breakthroughs to those impactful and powerful solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dossier, we're going to turn to you next. Continuing this theme of thinking outside the box in biotechnology, it's not just about medicine, it's not just about agriculture. It's really got the capacity to inform a lot of different fields. Biomason is a very cool example of that. So can you tell us a little bit about your perspective on what the cutting edge horizon looks like? What are some of the opportunities? And conversely, what are some of the challenges that you see?
Oh, sorry. We have to design the solutions for scale. 10 years ago, we weren't paying attention to the built environment. We know now that 8% of CO2 emissions are coming from cement. Cement is one of the pillars that enabled our modern environment, but they're really inert. They're not doing anything. The materials that we use to build with are just standing there and starting to fall apart. So we have this new opportunity to actually design the materials for our future. When you look at construction materials, it's not something that's, you have a lifespan of 20 years and it goes away, and we're talking about hundreds of years. So being able to empower the built environment to do more, and I would say, coming from the earlier session, my background being in architecture and writing my first NSF grant, I started all this in my second bedroom. I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is I wanted to grow cement. I went to the library and checked out all the books that I could on biomineralization and started to learn about biology, which biology is very, very beautiful. But there's so much more that biology can do. And I think that, through the support that Biomason has had through the Department of Defense, through DARPA, for being able to make underwater living marine cement that continues to repair itself and grows, and it pulls CO2 out of the water. Those are the types of innovations that I firmly believe that our future needs, as well as being able to, create these vertical takeoff and landing pads, as was described earlier, being able to spray this technology down. So I think from an architecture perspective, it's also looking at what else can these materials do, because we've only discovered 1/1000th of 1% of the microbes on the planet. And right now what's happening is we're starting to lose a lot of that diversity. I think that when it comes to the challenges, when we're talking about a bioeconomy, we're also required to think through the substrates and what we're going to use as feedstocks for all of these amazing innovations. So we also have a responsibility to feed ourselves. So, in my opinion, I would obviously put the feedstocks for human health before I would put it for cement. So that creates more of innovation for us to figure out what's the minimal amount, that we can have in a supply chain. What's the most local thing that we can have in the supply chain so that we can start to utilize more and more waste streams on a local level. And then I think lastly, in terms of challenges, is looking at what adjustments do we need to make to our policy to enable these innovations to really get to scale. When we're looking at the built environment, it's a very conservative element. It's full of standards and regulation, which absolutely have to be there. But what are things that we can do now that will enable those materials to really have a chance to start to decarbonize our world?
Thank you so much. And in continuing along this sort of sustainability theme, I'd like to turn to Dr. Dyson. So I did Google you. I watched a lot of your videos, and I've heard you talk a lot about a sustainable future. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you, and where does biotechnology fit into that?
Absolutely. So wonderful to be here. And I'll start by talking about how I got here. So my mother's from Louisiana, and I went there a lot as a kid, but I went back in 2005 to a very different reality. After Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, I was one of the many people who went to try to help rebuild the city. And at that point, it became very clear to me just the devastating impact of weather events. That was my first time really seeing the devastating impact of weather events. And as weather events become more frequent and more intense, my question was, how could I be a part of the solution? So ultimately started a company called Converti and then Air Protein with Dr. John Reed and James White to really attack that issue. And so as we try to innovate to solve some of the problems, thinking outside the box is necessary. In our case, we actually thought outside the planet, going to another governmental agency, NASA, during the space program in the 60s and 70s. They had the question, if we were to send astronauts on long space journeys, how could we feed them very effectively if they're gone for a year or more? And of course, if you leave the planet with carbon, you don't pick up any along the way. You have to figure out how to recycle it. And so one of the ideas they came up with was to use elements of the air, essentially, to create nutrients and create closed-loop carbon cycles. So we picked up where they left off and began working on a way to take elements of the air to manufacture products, and ultimately with Air Protein, food. And one of the biggest problems, of course, is that the food industry produces more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector. And it is a huge contributor to deforestation. 2019 saw record fires in Brazil to make room for cattle grazing. So that's something that we're really focused on addressing. And so with the technology that we're commercializing now, making food, essentially protein being kind of the biggest culprit in all of this, the way that we make meat specifically, making that from elements of the air in the way that's nutritious, all the essential amino acids, vitamins and minerals, vitamin B12 and other things, so that we can deliver really cleaner, greener solutions for our progeny. So as we, this is a very exciting time. A lot of people worked hard on, leading up to this initiative. I'm excited that it's being announced and that there is an effort to invest in advancing the bioeconomy. And as we do that, we can think about that, when my grandparents were farmers, back in, when they were born, early 1900s, there were 1.6 billion people on the planet. Now, we're almost at 8 billion. We'll be at 10 billion by 2050. We really do have to figure out how to solve some of the big challenges out there. And the bioeconomy really is going to be a part of that. And so I'm excited with this announcement and to be here today.
Thank you so much. Dr. John Chandani, I'm going to turn it over to you because a really striking thing when you look across this panel and frankly across this room and our conversation this morning is that there's this enormous intersection of public-private partnership, academia, government, industry, all coming together. Can you talk about what NSF's role is in fostering that ecosystem, particularly in biotechnology?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. Great to be here. Really just a momentous occasion this week with the signing of the Bioeconomy Executive Order. One of the things that the previous panel alluded to was the unique American innovation ecosystem. The American innovation ecosystem that, frankly, others all around the world look at us with envy, trying to be able to emulate what we're able to do here. So what makes that American innovation ecosystem so unique? Well, for 50 years, for 70 years, going all the way back to Vannevar Bush and Science, the Endless Frontier, for those of you who might remember that manuscript or might have read that manuscript, that spoke to the value of federal investment in basic research, often at academic institutions, and often that ultimately powers new discoveries, new innovations, new discoverers, new inventors, right? And as a matter of fact, when I look around the room and I have conversations with some of you as I've had this morning, many of the companies that exist in this space today, and frankly, nearly every single synthetic biology company has its roots tied back to that basic research investment by the federal government and has its roots to programs like the Small Business Innovation Research, the SBIR program. Ginkgo Bioworks, the director commented on that on the previous panel, $3 million of investment by the federal government in SBIR. Today, it's a $4.4 billion company. Right? Maybe even higher than that. But the illustration there is talk about that return on investment. And that is through the symbiosis of bringing together academia and industry and government to have a shared agenda and carry things forward. So how do we do that at the National Science Foundation? Well, many of the advances that we have supported over the years that have led to ideas or inventions with commercial potential, they have come out of investments that we've made to programs that try to nurture, try to catalyze those partnerships of bringing users and consumers and beneficiaries to the table together with the researchers to motivate the problems to work hand in glove on those problems with the researchers and ultimately to lead to piloting and prototyping and results that could be commercialized or taken to society more generally. The first NSF-funded engineering research center devoted to synthetic biology has produced dozens of companies. So Ginkgo is a great example, but here's another one. Bolt Threads, right? Bolt Threads is applying innovative biotechnology to sustainable manufacturing using yeast and fungi, ultimately to be able to produce silk for fabrics and synthetic leather for shoes and handbags. So these are examples of how NSF investment can catalyze partnerships, bringing folks together, folks at the labs, folks in civil society, folks in private industry to really pursue a shared agenda in terms of the challenge spaces that we're trying to tackle. The other thing that I'll say is we are also very passionate at the National Science Foundation about direct partnerships. We work closely with our colleagues at the Department of Energy. We work closely with our colleagues at other agencies, USDA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. We work closely with private industry and foundations as well. Why? Because we want to be able to bring together shared expertise, shared resources to ultimately be able to understand what are the problems that we want to tackle. What's the research agenda tied to this executive order, for example, that we want to be able to address when it comes to mitigating climate change, to food security, to the social and behavioral aspects of this work, to the ethical aspects of this work, and ultimately to education and workforce development. And one last thing that I'll say, I think, one of the things that we're really passionate about increasingly at the foundation is how do we tap into the challenges and the opportunity potential in every corner of the country. The NSF Regional Innovation Engines program that my new directorate launched earlier this year, we got close to 700 concepts from all around the country, every corner of the country, every state, every territory engaging in that effort. Why? Because when you think about the circular bioeconomy, when you think about the future biotechnologies, there are challenges that take different forms in different regions. So diversity is important from a thought leadership perspective, from an individual perspective. It's also important from a location, geographic perspective as well. How do we harness the geography of innovation? How do we harness the individual diversity that makes the U.S. so unique? And so that's why this public-private partnership ecosystem is so critical at the end of the day.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Miller, I'm going to turn to you next because I've spent time on your company's website, and it's filled with phrases that I think really capture this idea of the exciting potential of biotech innovation, synthetic biology, clean chemistry, sustainable ingredients. There's also a lot of interesting info about sharks, so pro tip if you visit. But when you're talking to your neighbors, your family around the Thanksgiving dinner table, who maybe don't use those phrases a whole lot, how do you convey that biotech and the life sciences industry are the pathways to the future?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you and good morning. And by the way, simple answer, you do it by putting products in their house. But let's come back to, first of all, it's a great privilege to be here as an immigrant, being in a place that actually innovates at the level of our country and being with a government that's just made a bet in what I believe is the definition of the future revolution in chemistry. Couldn't be a better time. And to do it where the initiatives are spot on, I think are, again, a moment in time that we shouldn't forget. And, there is nothing like organisms and great minds coming together. Because when you can get organisms and great minds coming together, you make better chemistry, period. And that is the greatest gift we could have. We have $40 million of, more than 50 million actually, of DARPA and DOD investment over the years. And the dollars are really good, but I have to tell you, more than the dollars, the quality of the thinking and the quality of the projects have moved our science well beyond anything we can imagine. When we first started working with DARPA, I think it took us about 3 years to develop chemistry from a target, basically get a molecule or get a organism to make a molecule. Today, it's less than 9 months, and I can tell you that the projects we did with DARPA, the quality of thinking, how they pushed this, the targets they gave us, made us better, made us the best innovator in the world for biochemistry, for bioengineering. The bioeconomy is real, and it is the future of all chemistry. So I think the $30 trillion number earlier, it is big, but it's also real. And that's the part I think we have to remember. I love programs, but I think of programs as inputs. I think of products as impact. And I think DNA-based chemistry is not about the future, it's here. And I want to give you some examples, and I want to leave you with an ask, because I think it's a moment that not only should we be the best innovators and the best owners of the science, we should also be, and we have, I believe, the right to be the best manufacturers in the world, the best biomanufacturers in the world. And we do not have that today, and that is not right. And that's the part that I think we could really change in this country. So more than half of you in this room are today using a product that has an amorous molecule inside of it. I have no doubt. By the way, it might actually be all of you, because if you actually wash your clothes, you're probably using something that's made by Amyris. If you clean your home, something that's made by Amyris is probably in that product. I can go on and on. If you buy a product from L'Oreal, if you buy a product from Estee Lauder, if you buy a product from Shiseido, you are probably buying something that has an Amyris ingredient, meaning a biomanufactured molecule inside that product. And that's my answer to your question. How you get your neighbors to relate to biochemistry is you make biochemistry part of everything they use. And why would they use it? Because it's better for them and better for the planet. And why would you not, right? So that's a critical part of where we go. Now, China is absolutely at the forefront of wanting to make biochemistry the #1 strategic initiative in that country. And I know that because almost every day I have a call from somebody in the Chinese government who wants our technology in China. To this point, we've decided not to, for one simple reason. They require the technology and the manufacturing to stay in the country. They require the technology and the manufacturing to stay in the country. And I don't want to manufacture in China, so the technology is not there today. I think that makes this a huge priority for us to move beyond. We actually do both. We invent new chemistry, and we actually fix supply chain issues in current chemistry. And I can give you examples of many of those, including your shark one. Why are sharks all over our website? Because, like, whether it's skincare, I mean, can you imagine wanting to look young by killing sharks? Just doesn't make any sense. So when we discover that the #1 emollient, the #1 moisturizer in the world comes from shark liver, we decided that wasn't right. So we actually decided to bioengineer a pathway to make the #1 emollient in the world. And we did it in a way that now we deliver 80% of the world's need of that moisturizer. We're expanding the market for it. We do it cheaper, we delivered it faster, and we deliver it in a more quality way than any other source in the world. That's biomanufacturing. That's bioengineering. That's what we do. On creating new chemistry, like, I hate the fact that we pack silicones into our hair and our bodies. And I hate the fact that we drain silicones into our water system every single day. So I decided we invented new chemistry. We invented a molecule called hemisqualane. Why did we do that? Because we thought using silicones we just had enough of. So sure enough, what is the fastest growing ingredient in our portfolio? Hemisqualane. What's it doing? It's eliminating the need to use silicones in hair care and body wash throughout the world. That's biomanufacturing. That's biochemistry made real. We really are all about solving big problems and doing it with biomanufacturing. The last example I'll give you is squalene as an adjuvant, because I think it's a perfect example of the national security issue we face and we could really make a difference with. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was clear adjuvants for vaccines were a critical part of the solution. As we looked at that carefully, we identified that squalene from shark is one of the top used adjuvants in vaccines, including the flu vaccine. And we realized that the supply chain isn't very predictable. Like, how many villages can kill how many sharks in how fast a time to ensure we stock our vaccine. It just doesn't happen. So we decided to kick on a project to make squalene directly from fermentation. In 9 months, from target to finish, we have an organism that loves to make squalene and is actually doing a great job making it at industrial scale. That is biomanufacturing. That is the bioeconomy providing solutions. Now, let me get to the issue and what the ask is. Today, we are the largest biomanufacturer in the world of advanced chemistry, period. We make over 20,000 tons of advanced molecules. We have the most sophisticated biomanufacturing facility in the world. Just started operations in Brazil. And that's it. It's in Brazil. We're the largest. We're the best. We do this day in and day out. We've scaled more bioengineered molecules than anyone in the world because we believe products matter. Products make a difference. So, what's the ask? The ask is that we actually, in the U.S., become the leader in biomanufacturing, not to leave it to other parts of the world. It's in other parts of the world because we haven't solved feedstock. It's in other parts of the world because we don't invest in it. It's in other parts of the world because we haven't made it a strategic priority. My ask is simple. Let's make it a strategic priority. And by the way, the statement about do we want in? We want in. As a company, we are the best in the world at developing, scaling, and manufacturing biomaterials. So guess what? I am happy to share our capability. I am happy to create a mega complex in the U.S. that actually solves the biomanufacturing problem for the U.S. And by the way, we can do it for a lot less money than the government just gave Intel. We can do it for $1 billion. Give us $1 billion, we're in. We'll actually build it, we'll support it, and we'll make it open to the industry so that the U.S. overnight can become the biomanufacturing hub that enables biochemistry to really make a difference, not only for the planet, but starting here in the U.S., whether it's our military or whether it's the everyday citizen that deserves better products on their shelves every day and shouldn't be forced to buy what the petrochemical industry has decided they should get every day. So with that, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All of you had Shark on your meeting bingo card are well ahead of the game. Dr. Richmond, I'm going to turn to you because, climate change, mitigating its effects, finding sustainable sources of energy, these are sort of the challenges of our time, our generation. We heard Secretary Granholm speak to this today. How do you think about this when you look across the landscape of everything out there? How does the innovation at the intersection of biotechnology and energy climate solutions look to you?
Well, thank you. It's really pleasant to be here. More than pleasant, it's exciting too. So it's just really exciting these days. So I'm so delighted to be here, and I'm so delighted to have all our partners here too, NSF and other agencies, because if we're going to solve this problem, we have to go across agency. So a little bit of the background of my office. I oversee $15 billion of funding for research in both the basic area and the applied area of DOE, all of those programs. I also oversee funding at all the 17 DOE laboratories. Three of them are NNSA lab. They are security labs, so we are tightly tied. That Jill Ruby, the other undersecretary, oversees. We are tightly tied to the NNSA side in all the bio things that we are doing. And we are also tightly tied to the other undersecretary's office, which is in deployment. And so we are making sure that what happens in the basic energy to the applied energy gets driven right over to deployment with Bill. So we have a lot going on right now, and it's very exciting. My portfolio supports research at universities and colleges all over the country with stories, success stories that similar to what NSF has, and that's why it's wonderful to have them as partners, as well as to be able to work with many, many companies that DOE has over the years. And so DOE is uniquely positioned in both biomanufacturing and biotechnologies because we have the tools. With these laboratories, we have incredible tools, whether it be the light sources or the centers that we have, that, for example, were key for the first molecular structure of the COVID protein that then we used to derive the vaccines from. Our light sources are open to any of the biotechnology areas in addition to medicinal areas. Because we span the basic fundamental research to applied processes, we also have research that goes all the way through the TRL level so that we can easily go towards commercialization. This is really, really important to us to have this now ready to go ready to take shape and go. So at DOE, we are actively designing and testing dedicated bioenergy crops and modified microorganisms to break down renewable plant biomass and convert it to fuels, chemicals, and also materials we currently would otherwise get from petroleum. As the Secretary mentioned, we recently put out $178 million in basic research efforts across the country to support the production of next-generation biofuels, bioproducts, and biomaterials. And there's additional money for critical minerals and materials, which is a huge deal for us at DOE. And so with this $178 million, it's to identify genes relevant to improve bioenergy crops and for better, and since I'm, as you noted, a Kansas native, I totally get this, for better biomass production, to understand how soil microbes move carbon and nutrients, which provide a wealth of genetic potential relevant to biotechnology, and for quantum-enabled imaging concepts to expand the ability to visualize complex biological systems within cells. And with our exascale computing facilities, our supercomputers, which everyone is available to use, we're going to be right at the forefront of any kind of modeling that needs to be done. DOE also supports large team science, and like the bioenergy research centers that are in association with the Joint Genome Institute, the Agile Biofoundry, and the BOTTLE, how can you come up with an acronym like BOTTLE, consortium, and I'm not going to tell you what that stands for, consortium at the forefront of our long-term efforts to be more sustainable sources of energy and products independent of petroleum. Recently, a DOE-funded project demonstrated the ability to design microorganisms that can take concentrated CO2, I get very excited about this one, from stacked gas emissions and convert it to commodity chemicals, acetone and isopropanol for industrial sources. The work appeared in Nature Biotechnology this past February and was funded by the Office of Science and EERE. We worked together in our applied areas and included researchers from Lasertec. So the DOE National Laboratories, as I noted, they are really the gems in the crown of the DOE, and they are suited to provide state-of-the-science instrumentation, not just our light facilities, but a lot of other instrumentation for users to come in and take advantage of, and of course the computational analysis and simulation. So with that, I just want to say we're excited. We're excited to be involved in this. I'm excited to be here this morning. I'm excited to be with NSF2 and all the other agencies, because together we can move forward in this area in ways that no other country can. So, all right.
Thank you so much. So I just, before I move to the next question for all of our panelists, I just want to note that, 25 years ago, coming to a meeting on biotechnology, you would look out over the audience and it wouldn't necessarily reflect the full power of the diversity of our